Whoops, I hit the wrong button. So hey everyone, we're going to give it a couple more minutes before we get started, but we got a fun little collection of people. Before we get going, just remember, happy holidays, taxation is theft, and Satoshi was right about everything. How about that? Now,
I didn't even start it. It
now,
wasn't
who
even
is
me.
Satoshi? That's something that I'm not going to talk about today because
He's watching.
yes, he sees you when you're in the mempool. He knows when you use RBF. Like, no, I don't. But yes, I don't want to get sued by Craig fucking Roy. So I'm gonna,
You've already said too much, Joel.
I've said too much.
If you say his name one more time, he will appear in the super chat.
Well, that's only once. We got to say it twice and then 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he already blocked me on Twitter though, and it was I was very respectful with him, but I still got it by just saying, oh, well, how come this? Well, what about that? And he's just like, bye, hater. Okay.
Do you think just giving him the energy, like, I'm always, I just don't even think about him at all. And to me, it's like, why even acknowledge his existence anymore, right?
That's true.
For the lulz, right?
The
For the lulz. Yeah, I know, but at the same time, it's like
the lulz are a compelling reason.
But there are things that I get hooked on and I keep talking about. And I think, why do I keep talking about this? I need to let it go, right?
The funny thing, and I'll just this is like the last little Greg Wright stuff before, well, hopefully, before we just get into the other stuff. So, yeah, he's, it's funny because I know the BSV community better than probably most people who aren't BSVers. And, there's an interesting community of people. A lot of them do not like Craig at all. There's a lot of them that think he's like a weird, scammy person, and there's a lot of people that like think he's like Satoshi, but more of a liability, and like they just like hope he's like shuts up. It's like I would say.
Imagine thinking Satoshi was a liability. What the hell? Imagine being like, we've got Satoshi, the Bitcoin MVP, #1 draft pick in crypto, but goddamn, that guy's a liability.
It is kind of funny. I mean, it does make you things that make you go, huh? However, he's I can understand that because like founders go a little weird sometimes. Like Dash's founder, Evan Duffield, genius of a guy, really nice dude. And then after 2017, he just started to he just retired-ish, but then he started getting a little crazy, I think. And so
don't you think Bitcoiners view the fact that Satoshi's gone as, I mean, from what they say, they see that as a benefit.
Yes, it's the crypto. It's the crypto virgin birth, Just like, where did this baby come from?
Right.
I don't know. Must have been magic. It's like one of those
things.
things.
Moved on to work on other things,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a good thing because you have these cult of personalities, right? And they kind of distract from the fact of this is just a tool, It's kind of like Steve Jobs and Apple. Jobs was, eclectic in his own way, but so many more people contributed to Apple's design and products, like Johnny Ive. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's crazy when you see the fanaticism behind just one person. And it's like, if it's supposed to be money, right? Why do what's the point of idolizing, this one person? Maybe it's all just the human in us. We want to find that attachment or something. But and with Craig, no, I don't want to go there. That guy makes me a little. It's fun to watch him sell phone. It's another when he comes after you to start owning you with his lawsuits and. Yeah.
It's just a pain. No one has time for that. Before we officially run the intro and stuff, I would like to point out that we've got quite the global collection of people here. Obviously, Jeremy's not around the U.S. at the moment, and Fulagi in the comments is a proud Kiwi, and Sylvan's from Canada.
Good morning, mate.
And I don't know where Omar's from. Hi, Omar. But I always like our fun little international thing. All right. Let's actually roll the official intro graphic, and then, we'll get going. And while I'm quiet is when it's running, because you guys can't see it, but whatever. All right. Ready? Here we go. So, hey everyone, officially, welcome to the 94th edition of the Digital Cash Rundown. More importantly, it's the holiday special, which people always like those kinds of things. I'm joined by a great and eclectic group of people, Digital Cash Maximalists, I should say. We have Grant from the Litecoin Underground. How's it going, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on. First time.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
And then we have Jeremy from the Bitcoin Cash Podcast. How's it going, man?
Hey everyone.
You wake up.
Doing brilliant. Good morning to everyone in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia and New Zealand checking in. Love it. It's already Christmas Eve. I'm already at it in the future.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you have the greatest sacrifice of all of us, so thank you. And then Esteban, how's it going, man?
What's going on, dude? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a no agenda show. I didn't exactly not prepare, but I intentionally didn't have things on like the agenda to talk about. This is just, this is going to be a nightmare to timestamp, honestly, later, but that's fine. Just talk about anything and everyone. So first off, I see a nice tall glass of vodka, Jeremy. Is that what that is?
Water. I've got to drive later, mate. I'm driving to Melbourne, so
Oh no.
I can't drink it, even though I usually would.
Okay. Well, you, in counter to, the proud culture of your people, will probably be the only sober one here. I don't know.
What time is it there?
It's 7:15 in the morning on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Merry Christmas to you then, bud.
Yep. Merry Eve, Christmas
Merry
Eve. I'm drinking this thing, an Earth Eagle, lager.
I honestly don't even know what this is. This is a bourbon I bought that was
Nice.
something new that wasn't ridiculously expensive, and I should go check it out. Because actually, it's not bad. It was only like $20. I was pretty happy with the price.
Yeah.
I'll let you know a decent, cheap bourbon.
Oh, there you
Once
go.
I take a bathroom break, I'll go up there.
Yeah.
I'm having a post-workout with EAAs in water.
Nice.
Are you in the U.S.?
I am in the U.S.
Okay.
In Florida.
All right.
Yeah.
You guys aren't suffering like Joel and I. It's
Nope.
it's like 2 degrees with the wind chills like 20 below
Well,
in the Midwest right now.
The
Yeah,
funny
no, I
thing,
escaped that a long
It's-
time ago.
it's actually not that cold here in the frozen north. It's like in the 50s Fahrenheit. So like, I don't know what that is. But it's like, it's maybe 10, 15 Celsius. I don't know exactly the conversion rate, but it's like, it's not that bad. It's well above freezing. The snow we got is almost all melted now. The problem is we got tons of wind, which knocked out the power a little while ago. Thankfully, not right now. And we got a ton of rain, and my basement flooded. So we have a bunch of like fans in and trying to like dry it out right now. It's so if you can hear any like sounds in the background of this, then you know that it's
our
because
miners.
yeah.
Yeah, not the Bitcoin miners. What's going on?
Thankfully, I had nothing but liquor in the basement, so it's okay. It's all going to be fine. I should just remind everyone watching that you can go to cointr.ee/the Desert Links coin tree, and there's a little like donation thing if you can leave a super chat message. Some people said that theirs didn't go through or whatever before. Didn't you send one, Jeremy, before?
Yeah, I don't know if it went through eventually or what was happening with that. But I've had
Well-
that happen when I've donated onto other people's pages too. So it's
Well-
not always like reliable.
Yes, it will go through, but it doesn't mean that the actual the message will go through. But if you just listen, this is a life hack. If you just say, "Hey, I sent you something on Cointree, it didn't show up," you can skip to the head of the line. Even I have no way to tell if you're like a lying bastard, and I'll just read your comment anyway. But if you have one of my NFTs in my Discord, go to the Digital Cash Rundown channel and just start typing in stuff. So the more the merrier, obviously. All right. So first off, it's the end of the year. A lot of crazy stuff happened this year. What's some of the stuff that's stuck out to you guys? I don't know who wants to go first. Just think about it. Like, what are some of the stuff in the crypto world that's been like, this is, wow, I'll always remember that about this year.
Well, I think it's the the exchange crashes, right? And I picked a hell of a time to get off fiat and ride this roller coaster ride all the way down to the bottom. That's pretty fun. Just kind of seeing it's definitely a big eye-opening experience, and it really does expose a lot of people. I think bear markets it definitely is a cleansing process, just watching all across the board, and we're watching who's swimming naked right now. And
Yeah,
it's a very ugly sight.
incredibly ugly.
Because I do our weekly spaces every Wednesday. I do them, and it felt like every week some story was crazier than the last week. It was like it'd be something with Celsius, and the next week it's Luna, and then whatever you can think of, something crazy was going on. And I agree with you. I think it shows who's surviving during the hardest times, and where are the real communities. That I'll tell you, that's been the interesting thing in the last month or so, is the lack of what I'd probably are bots, right, or shillers on Twitter and all that, who are shilling these coins that were nothing, and now there's nobody out shilling them because there's no money left, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it was, I don't know, I think it was a good year. I had this conversation, like I said in the spaces. I said, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that like Celsius FTX? And one guy was like, obviously it's bad. And I was like, are you sure? And everybody else thought, no, this is actually good, right? Because it was already a fraud. It's just a matter of it got exposed, which is good to expose fraud.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I love about the entire like cryptocurrency world is because there's nobody there to back you out, right, or bail you out when this stuff hits the fan. I mean, you get to see it for what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is I don't want to say it's a completely free market, because the space is, there is regulation everywhere. It's just unclear. But, this is the way it's supposed to be. When the banks collapsed, nobody should have been there to bail them out. Should have just let them fail on their own. Yes, people are going to get hurt, but you get a chance to rebuild. You cleanse everything out of the system. And at the end of it, it took a little bit of nerve, courage, to just say, yep, just carry on. Let's keep going. And, just wash all the bad actors out too. I'm happy about it at the end of it all.
Yeah, I think for me, this year has been it might be the tipping point for crypto to just take over, honestly. And the reason is because this is the biggest collapse of all the stuff that we've kind of ever seen. Well, maybe not Mt. Gox, but anyway, the point is huge collapse, huge disaster. And both everyone has seen it, everyone, not just the crypto people, but everybody has seen it. The FTX story has been huge. And secondly, everyone has understood that this isn't the end of crypto. I've seen so many people for the first time ever see FTX blow up and be more interested and also more aware that like, oh, Bitcoin is dead. It's over. See you later, guys. You're not going to be back next year, right? That would be typically the story. But crypto is now at the point where everyone understands that crypto is going to survive. There was just some fraud and different, shenanigans going on. So it seems to me like the narrative is getting to a point that once it starts up again, right, should eventually will, then everyone will be like, I cannot miss this time. That's my theory.
Right. This sounds like the cycle, right? Once you have that big crash, you have the diehards who are still in it. And it was never about the gains, right? It was, I want sovereignty. I want to use money that I have control over, that I'm not getting gypped on, with processing fees and bank fees and wire fees and all that stuff. And then, of course, we get into a bull market at some point. You're going to get the pumpers again. You're going to get the gain bros and all that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's kind of it's a discovery process. So like, I don't think I wasn't prepared for I didn't know what FTX was until relatively recently, let's be honest. I don't use exchanges. I remember Blockfolio rebranded to FTX, and I was like, because they got acquired. But I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, there's this exchange. And then I really knew what they were when SBF started like talking all this shit about regulation. And so I didn't, but then when the collapse, I didn't realize how deep everything went. Yeah, like I knew
Right.
there was a lot of nonsense. The thing is, like, for people who are focused on like the real stuff, on like what really matters, it's pretty easy to see that there's a lot of nonsense, right? But it's like I like seeing more of a face to it, a little more of a, a little more of a like
A villain.
Yeah.
well, a lot of villains for that, that's for sure. But the funny thing is, like, a lot of this, the free market remains undefeated, I like to say, because there was all this, like, all dumb money in the space. And when the crash happens, I was pleasantly surprised at how little the good assets, took hits. And, like, for example, I've seen, like, what is it, like, I mean, I don't really watch the markets too closely, but like Dash, for example, jumped like 20, 30 places in the market cap rankings or something. And it just like, it didn't really go up too much, a little bit, but like it just, everything else is just washing out. And then like I tracked like, Litecoin, Monero, Zcash, all those like are holding / going a little bit up. I haven't checked out Bitcoin Cash. Has that been doing super well?
It's down, but only like a tiny fraction. Yeah, obviously FTT blowing up, like bumped it up a place or two.
Yeah.
It's just still here. Like everybody was just like, all right, moving on. I don't think they had much BZH to fraud everyone with in the first place, right? I think that's kind of the same point too.
But do you think that's a symptom? So you mentioned Esteban, the price pumping. Like I feel like that's the next thing that needs to get washed out. Is to invalidate the price pumping, because that's at the root of everything, right? That's the sales pitch of crypto has been, its price is going to go up forever, and this is something I've been trying to find a good way to put it. But when your foundational message is this price is going to go up forever, and you build your whole kind of identity around that. When that doesn't happen, then the people who came there for the price, they never learned like what these things really are. They never came there to understand the assets. And I think the price pumpers need to be invalidated at some point, or again, exposed for like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the reality is these are, like you said, the power of these assets isn't necessarily in these short-term gains. It's a long game. This is a saver's mentality,
Right.
Of, stack when you can, don't take undue risk. And I mean, God, just this week, Swan came out with that home equity loan thing, and we don't know all about the sale. I'm not attacking Bitcoiners, but they're the most vocal people. But with Saylor talking about mortgage everything, and it was like,
Swan. You may attack that all day long. I tried so long to get blocked by Corey, and I finally did. And
yeah,
cheers.
I think I'm going to eventually too. What's funny about him? I'm like 50-50 about him, because I feel like there's some things I completely agree with. Like I like the fact that he's trying to, I guess, show people what scams are.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a little bit. He paints everything as a scam, but at least he's bringing some awareness. But how anybody who's not a maxi feels about maxis.
Yeah, I mean, I take everybody with a grain of salt, right? And for me, I mean, this is my personal philosophy.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not trying to have heroes in this space, right? It's why I don't have a hero in the dollar. I don't have hero in gold or real estate or anything like that.
Yep.
And I mean, these are just people trying to push their wares. He's making a sale. I mean, just that's me in my point of view. And I mean, even Fake Toshi says some things that are correct from time to time. And I, for the most part, disagree with him almost 99% of it. But, when he puts out a good idea in the public space, well, now that belongs to all of us. So I don't care where a good quote comes from. If it's true, it's true.
Well, that's why that's why I keep my toe kind of like grazing the edge of like the BSV pool at all times, because it's one of those like most radically divergent. It's like up is down. It's like the conspiracy theory of crypto, kind of like everything that the mainstream says is not true, and there's immense value in having that perspective out there, because
BSV is the Alex Jones of crypto.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's being too nice, maybe, but like, it's the conspiracy theory as a whole of crypto, where when you look at conspiracy theories, right? Let's be honest. There's a lot of really dumb things that people believe, with a lot, but like the idea of question everything comes out with a lot of good outcomes too. And so, like, for example, like scaling, right? Everyone has these ideas like what scales, how does scaling work? Can you scale on chain? What are the trade-offs and all that kind of stuff? And BSV went the absolute, balls to the walls on chain scaling. And first off, a couple things. First off, it proved that it works, like you can do it. And then it also started to prove what are the drawbacks. Like, well, they only have like a few nodes, and that's pretty centralized. And then a lot of these nodes have like a lot of services like the Koinomi wallet and other things are starting to drop BSV support because it's expensive to run these nodes. And more importantly, it's expensive, but they're not getting their money's worth by running them. They're not getting a lot of actual, it's just a bunch of like bullshit coming through the network. So it's like, okay, we get a picture of like how that works. And then I remember when they got 51% attacked a few times, and then they came up with this thing of like 51% attacks don't exist, like they're not real. Just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But
See,
at the same
that point,
time,
it's delusional, right?
yes,
like,
that
there's the
that was
conspiracy
delusional.
part.
But I did learn something. I learned that 51% attacks aren't just you steal everyone's coins. There's very limited amounts of damage you can do, and when the attack's over, I guess, like if the majority hash rate person goes away and stops doing it, stuff comes back to normal eventually. It's like more of a disruption than like a destroy the whole network. And it's like, I had to wait.
It kind
for
of gives
people,
insight into what's going on. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that. I mean, that's the thing about all of this stuff is you get to see things for what they are, right? You test them out and figure. I mean, really, crypto as a whole is still very, very new, very young. We don't know what really is going to work in the end, right? And I mean, it's exciting, and there's definitely a lot of debates and arguments for people to have. I did want to go back to the idea of like getting rid of the pumpers, though, and the whole concept of like gains. And I think I've been on this mindset for a while, or at least on this idea that people don't know what money is, right? In my lifetime, I discovered this 2019, and I've been on this planet for several decades at this point, and no one ever told me that. Definitely having conversations with my parents and other relatives and coworkers, etc., and they don't know what it is either. And because we have such a inflationary monetary system, right? Everything just gets so expensive. So the natural idea is, hey, I got to find something that's going to help stay ahead of this. What's that going to be? And so the pumps and the gains, well, and I can just imagine like the fiat gain bros are just pumping the whole way. They're excited and they're happy, but somewhere deep inside, there's got to be this idea of like, do I have enough? Like is what I'm doing going to make it? Oh, because I've made more money now, I have more tax liability, or I have more expenses, or I've got more problems now because I have more cash, or something of that nature. And how do you change that, right? Because that's a systemic foundational error or problem.
Well, that's some of the stuff that I see going on is all the principles, the Bitcoin principles, we'll call them, whatever, libertarian-ish principles that these assets were rooted in get sacrificed to chase the gains, right? So it's like, well, this nation's going to adopt it and that nation's going to adopt it and the government's going to say this. And, it's like all central banks are going to own Bitcoin. Like, I don't know if that's a good thing. Like, let's slow down and think about it. Is that what we really want?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it's a free market money. And so I think every actor is going to have their right to do what they want with it. But I think that just blanketly saying these things as if they're positives without really thinking about the drawbacks of some of the centralizing factors. And that's what, from the beginning, I've always been like, I'm a multi-coin guy. Like, I feel like I want as many to survive as possible because I think that's good for everybody.
Well, that's the thing about the free market is we're in a very strange time where we invented, or Satoshi or Craig or whoever. It's got.
I think it was,
All right.
it was Nick Szabo.
You got one more chance to say that name, and I
before
swear he's going to pop up in the super chats.
Dude, I would drop I would DM him the link to this thing just for the just to get him in here.
Give him a nickname, then you don't have to. You can just
Voldemort. He
plausible
shall not be
deniability.
But that's this is such a radically new thing, and one thing it's kind of been like a hard path to adoption, partially because it's a natural resource more than anything. It's not like it's like, what do you do with TCP/IP? Like let's sell us a bucket down at the market. Like, no, you can't. Like, you have to build things on top of it, and there's like so many layers of stuff. And so people kind of didn't know what crypto was good for a long time. I mean, obviously in the beginning, it's like, this is for money, it's to pay stuff. And then at some point, we can just gloss over the whole block size wars because that'll torpedo this podcast. But like, at some point, it just was like, well, what else? Well, what if this is the most secure, like, store of value in the world here? What if we can run decentralized applications there? What if we can gamble all over here? And then everyone's just like figuring out what works. And in a true free market, people pursue what makes the most sense immediately. And so the biggest thing is people have a hard time making money, and they have a hard time gambling. And crypto is really good for those. And so they just went there first. That's where the more money is right away. And so they're just hitting that until like that all collapses and gets washed out, and then there's no more money in that. Then they got to find other money. Like, where can I? Okay, well, like, let's say, adult industries or whatever industries have problems with financial censorship, which is like, as much as, people like Esteban and I are all like, wow, we love our censorship resistant money. Let's be honest, like 99, like can't think of a single payment I've ever made that would not have been allowable with fiat. I know there'd be more friction, more like I got a KYC here, or it's just hard to make because this person's in another country. Well, maybe there'd be a few, but very few payments were unallowable by fiat. But for some people, that would be like all their payments are unallowable by fiat, or they're all like super expensive or annoying to do. And so then that's where it goes next. And just the last thing to go will be like the average person just using their like PayPal-esque thing, probably.
Yeah, I think as far as adoption goes, what is it? You have like the 10% who's been buying different assets everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But then you're going to get the 90% who will eventually earn it because the other 10%, maybe end up like creating businesses or products or investing using the assets that they have, because the purchasing power is that much more than fiat, right? I don't know the future. All I know is I see a lot of, and this is just like from running a business and having all different types of people from different financial backgrounds and statuses, is that at some point, they just want good money, right? And that'll end up being the focus, is just going to that route. It's much easier to show people like how it works. And I mean, I think there's still a bright future, but right now I'm just looking at everything like, yeah, who needs it the most, right? Mm-hmm. Who really needs it? And I mean, we in North America, we've got our first world problems, right? The West has, essentially we live in the lap of luxury still. Mm-hmm. And just working with people from across the pond, I'm like, yeah, actually, this makes sense for you specifically to be using this, right? It's helpful for you. We can get around SWIFT. We can get around Western Union, blockades.
Get around Ripple.
Yeah. Yeah, just make life a little bit simpler.
The further you get from, it's like that Cantillon effect, right? The further you get away from the spigot, the more you can use these things. And that might be the first win that Bitcoin does, is just the awakening of what is the money system, for people to kind of lay bare, look how bad this current money system is versus the alternative. That may take 25 years,
Yeah.
I mean, it took us 50 years to see fiat for what it is, right? And I mean, the gold bugs knew from the beginning, but I mean, now we're kind of seeing it for all its ugliness.
Yeah, was it 1.7 trillion was our budget, right?
Yep, that
Well,
just got passed.
Don't rope me into this. It's not my budget. I didn't vote for it.
Yeah, me either. I didn't vote for it either.
Democracy. It's democracy.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I do think, at some point there's just going to be like a parallel. I really don't see the dollar going away anytime soon. But I do see a parallel
50
economy.
years, maybe.
Yeah, maybe another 50 years, maybe. But it'll be like the pound, right? Or some other currencies that are still floating around. That's just, it's not that valuable, but we still use it, right? Like the peso. But I can see like parallel economies just sprouting up. We see it now, right? It's not as large, but there are more and more people who have Bitcoin and crypto companies, or they're selling their wares directly for a different asset altogether. I forgot who. I think it might have been Peter Thiel's company, but he offered clients to make their payments in gold. So I mean, I just kind of see that at some point, it's just going to split. Right? We're going to have that divergence. They'll be working side by side, and hopefully the tax treatment gets a little better. But I think with that 1.7 trill, I think was it like 8 billion is going to the IRS as well to help with enforcement. So we'll see.
It'd be nice if we could get to the point where these things can be like accounted for as cash. So like if I have a merchant, I can just put it in my books as cash, as opposed to a cryptocurrency that has an exchange rate and all that crap.
Well, you could.
That's
just write down cash.
That's true.
I do know some people that do that. So a few, like I know a few merchants. I mean, I'm not gonna say who, but like when they take crypto, the accounting strategies are kind of interesting because I know some that just write it off as a promotional expense. So literally, they consider they're giving away the products they sell with crypto, and they're getting nothing in return, although they're getting crypto, and then they hold on to that. And then there's others that consider that like cash, and then the owner just like takes it out of whatever he gets paid, and so it's like he just buys it off of the business immediately, and so the business is still like all fiat kind of, but then he just ends up with it. So I mean, there's a million different ways, but like ultimately the enforcement abilities are going to be really difficult to, like, I like to point out, like, a lot of people say, like, well, get hung up on like legalities and stuff, and on an individual basis, that's a very good thing to get hung up on, because you could get really screwed if you don't pay attention to what's legal or not. But like, as I point out to people around here, there's more human beings who are in the United States who are not here legally, who then exist in the entire people in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts combined. There's like 11 million or something. That's a lot of people. And like, there's not 11 million that are getting caught and there's 11 million that just are here and deal with it. 11 million who can't get bank accounts, who can't do any of that kind of stuff, can't legally drive, yet somehow they get around. Like, somehow life finds a way, right? So with like the crypto world, like, crypto did not have legal, it didn't have legal anything when it didn't exist, obviously. And then it existed, and now it's like the government's kind of like struggling to figure it out still. Like, there's some like, well, you got to do capital gains, I guess. And then it's like, who has ever, like, this is I guess a interesting question. Who has ever gotten busted for spending their crypto and not reporting capital gains on a spend? Not on a sale, but on a spend. I've never heard of it happening. It might have happened. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Plead the fifth. I don't know.
I mean, I think I guess if you got audited and they were going to go through everything, you'd imagine it would be minuscule. I mean, the stuff I'm spending, I'm losing money on. So if they want to give me a tax credit for it,
yes, audit me harder, Daddy, because you could owe me some money.
I mean, everybody's got to have. a little bit of a willingness to say this is an important technology and want to put my. I mean, I don't know. I don't. Maybe I'm naive. I don't think if you're making small purchases and it's a few $100s of taxes you're avoiding in a year, that's going to end up putting you in jail or something. So.
Yeah, but also I don't know if who's even like paying attention. Like, I think the government up till now, I mean, things are changing, but I think that up till now they've mostly been like, well, you owe capital gains, I guess, on even that too, and they just don't know how that's going to work out. And there's like a lot of de minimis exemptions kind of being bandied about in the legislature, but like they're just still like figuring it out. And then they're like, we should regulate this way, and then SBF is like, we should do this way. Which, all in all, SBF's regulation thing, like I think was bad, but not bad. Like a lot of what he said made sense, except for like the DeFi stuff mostly, but it's still eh. And then
Wasn't it having a bit license like they did in New York?
Yeah, I think it was like he wanted to do like a national bit license instead, like a national financial license. And then, but more importantly, he wanted to regulate DeFi front ends like financial institutions. And that was like the really bad part. I mean, all the other stuff was just like, this boilerplate. But then Brian Armstrong came out with like what Coinbase thinks should be a thing. And that seemed pretty reasonable. It's probably honestly what we're going to end up getting. And I mean, I think they're just starting to figure some things out. But just like the weirdest thing, like the actual tax part, like capital gains, is one of the least weird parts about crypto. The hardest part is like the securities thing, because what the hell is a security? And like, well, it's pretty easy to define according to old rules. But like, if you have like monkey face DAO from your stupid NFTs that like this and that, and then like there's just so many layers of weirdness to it that you're like, well, who sold what with what expectations, and was it a sale if you turned ApeCoin into Cumrocket and then like switch that for another NFT, like. But see, and I wish that those aren't even, there is a Cumrocket. Like, it's not like
I know there is. It's just it's
like
get brought up, right?
And it's not like, well, let's vet and license Cumrocket ahead of time. No one's gonna do that. There's gonna be another one. There's gonna be Bazooka next or something. I don't know. It's just like it never ends, right? There's no limit to the amount of like tokens and projects that can be just pumped out, no pun intended, but like about just it's insane. And like you can't just be like, well, that was a security here and this was that. Like you can't stop that. You got to, at some point, I think at some point the government's going to get overwhelmed, globally is going to be overwhelmed by the ability to regulate crypto, like define something. And I think that they're going to at some point like retreat to a certain, like, all right, this is what we know we can get. It's like the negotiation phase. It's like the Overton window. You both hit your things and you come somewhere in the middle. And again, no pun intended. But like you all the jokes. But at some point I think they're going to be like, you gotta like pay taxes, and if you're selling these coins, like if it's a centralized project at all, you might have to like register as a securities exchange if you sell it. And that's basically going to be it. Like, pay taxes on the money you make broadly, and then that's probably what they're going to have to settle for. And I think no one's really going to freak too much out about that.
You have a lot of faith in them. The way I've been looking at it has been they're trying to find, looking under every rock to find ways to say, yeah, we can, pay for the money that, we're borrowing from the Fed. Mm-hmm. Right. And, whatever means necessary by hook or by crook, they'll get their hands on it. Because I feel like the government and representatives and congressmen and all of them are just so far removed from the public. Mm-hmm. And their constituents. I mean, luckily, if somebody has had the opportunity to talk to their congressman or their state rep, they call them up and complain like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I don't want you to vote for this bill. It's bad for whatever reason. I mean, sure, you have those good nuggets, few and far between, but I'm just looking at this as no, they want their tax revenue. They need it. There's already so many people, getting money under the table or people not reporting or whatever the case may be. And I agree with you. You can't take old systems and apply them to new, but I don't think they care, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, hey, this is
It's
the
just
way
not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
That's the key point, right? Is that basically the undeniable facts are reality is messy and crypto is decentralized. Like that's the whole winning strategy, right? Basically,
Right.
Crypto is a problem in proportional to how big it is, but how big it is how messy and how hard to follow it is, and how many different ways there are around things. So as a combination of those two factors, it's just like people are going to just carry on with what they're doing. And I love the fact that the more the government people are like, oh, we've got to regulate this, because everyone's using it. But the more they do that, the more likely they and all their, allies are using it themselves.
Right.
So it just kind of sneaks in the back door. And I think it's just going to come around to, at the end of the day, it was all just kind of FUD. Like that's kind of what we've seen over the years. And that's just going to keep happening, where it's like, I don't know, eventually it'll just be like Elizabeth Warren screaming, no, crypto, is like everyone else in Parliament is like, no, my crypto stash looking pretty good, actually. Like that's going to be how it ends up.
Like if you were to truly end up in a courtroom about tax evasion or something, and it's because you played a game and you received some token and it was a DeFi project, but you may not even know that, right? And it had a market value and you're trading it and selling it. And you'd have to show some malicious intent on the part of the user. And that, that's what we always talk about. Like jury nullification is a great thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like if the general public looks at it and goes, come on, this guy wasn't trying to do anything. He's not laundering money from terrorists. He's just spending his cryptocurrency. Like, did he really do anything wrong?
Yeah. Especially if it's all like an integrated game system. It's not like he's like buying money and cashing out. He's just like, again, riding the cum rocket, and he's got all these tokens running around, and they just flop this, flips them for something else, and eventually some like designer he pays, he like sends them like Zcash or whatever, and like they at some point it's gonna be crazy. And the funny thing is, there are so many tax loopholes in most of the world, I would think, but especially the US, that like they are there for the people who pass these laws, right? Like the people who want to soak everyone else still need their way of getting away with like keeping all their money. And so like one thing with the capital gains thing that a lot of people do is a lot of people take out loans, collateralized loans on their crypto, and they just spend that. And that's like, they do that instead of, they don't have to pay capital gains because of that. They do weird things like that. And so, for example, Thorchain is in the end kind of like stages of getting through its ThorFi lending product, where basically if you had like 1 Bitcoin, let's just say, you could then lend it out to the protocol, get half a Bitcoin worth of whatever out of it, and then you just like pay it back whenever in the USD amount of that at that time. And so it's like you can just spend all your crypto at the bottom of the bear market and only pay it back when it's at the top to get your collateral back out. And so then at that point, if people use this enough, and unfortunately with a decentralized protocol, it's hard to be like, look, I took this loan. It's a little bit like, all right, do you know how MetaMask works, Mr. IRS agent? At some point it's a little harder to explain, but at some point it's just going to be only the chumps do capital gains. And then because again, the ability to get around capital gains has been like automated into protocols. And at some point there might be just like wallets that auto swap to do like tax harvesting and and lending stuff, and just do a bunch of like auto wizardry to just get out of taxes kind of like legally. Right. And at that point, how can you design a law that like clamps down on that, but still has some loopholes that then someone doesn't just write a script that just gets around that loophole too. At some point, they got to be like, all right. Whatever you make is income. We want a chunk of that. And we're just going to focus on that. We're going to take like 20, 30% of your income or whatever. We're going to just, that's what we can get. Just we'll settle on that.
You know, one way people could do that is just instead of filing their taxes digitally, file a paper claim, right? And just overload the system with just bricks of of tax receipts. Because I know from a tax perspective, when they send it over via paper, it sets them back almost a year, right? So filing claims and all that stuff, it's just bloatware on their side.
Yeah, but that's
like, oh,
business idea, right? You create
Right.
some like protocol or something that takes your neatly filed digital taxes and puts it into paper in the most inconvenient way possible, and then you send it in, and you just pay like a small fee for like the service fee, and you just
pay for the stamp. There you go.
That would be so popular. So many people.
And would also have like a
that,
glitter
right?
bomb in there too, so it opens up. It's like
Yeah.
sprays glitter everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they're still operating on like Windows 98 in some parts of the government, and fax machines. I mean, what are we, Japan? Where that's what we're still operating on is fax machines. And
Well, when I was a kid growing up in Mexico, I got my driver's license from an office that was operating on typewriters still. So that's
damn, there you go.
yeah, and all that stuff. But so like they're not going to be able to keep up with all that stuff. It's at some point either the government's going to have to just be like, look, just tell us what you make and we'll take a piece of that, or they're going to have to start joining the crypto world and like develop more and more advanced like analytics so that they can kind of like auto compute like all your spank chain tokens, flop for, you know, rare pipit, this and that, and like all this stuff, and come out with like an automated formula for just like your total like
Then
total
they got to
amount
tie.
you make.
That's the thing. Then they got to tie every one of those to you and every single wallet. Like,
Yeah.
how do they do that without knowing which wallet is yours across every single asset and every DeFi?
I mean, on EVM chains, they could probably do that pretty easily today. But like over time, when you start having like, I mean, that's one reason I think they didn't. It's kind of very telling that Tornado Cash was like the big thing that they targeted. They didn't go after like Samurai Wallet or, you know, Wasabi or any of those Bitcoin ones. They didn't go after Mimblewimble on Litecoin. They didn't go after Zcash or even Monero or anything. They just went like, oh, this is what people are really using. I think honestly, it was more because the North Koreans were using it, and you can't just, part of like the whole ongoing, you know, conflict with North Korea, you know, the Cold War, I guess you should say, is you have to just maintain appearances. And so if they are using some stuff, you got to be like, oh my gosh, we got to block it.
Right.
But also, like,
But, I mean, isn't like Ethereum incredibly private too? So I mean,
Well, don't you think the NFTs too are a huge money laundering thing?
oh yeah,
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
that's where they have the value. That's probably a big chunk of it.
Yes, that's how you know they're real art, because they're mostly used for money laundering. You know,
sad to say,
True, that's true.
I can't believe Hunter Biden hasn't cranked out any NFTs yet.
yet. Now you cursed us.
Or
2023,
even better
we're
yet,
gonna see the Hunter Biden
Zelensky needs to create his own NFT line.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of which, I mean, Trump had his.
Yeah, it's a matter of time.
that massive amount of cringe.
Yes, in fact, let me. I'm gonna pull up the
Did you buy one?
I was thinking about
listen.
buying one just because. Right.
Listen, I really wanted to. Okay, I just didn't get there in time.
I've totally avoided the NFTs, and I don't do ICOs or any of that stuff. And I kind of thought this year would be fun to
Yeah, at some point,
start
I mean,
to learn to do the process. You know,
Yeah.
Okay, so I put it up on the screen. I don't, you guys can't see unless you're on YouTube, but whatever. The collect Trump cards, Trump digital trading cards on OpenSea has 7,413 ETH of total volume. Right, that's not that bad. That's a lot of money.
so that's 70 $740,000.
I was like, I'm thinking, sorry, adding some
1.4
zeros to
million?
that. It's in the
Oh, yeah,
millions
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and these are like crap. Like no offense to Mr. Teabag over there, but like these are crap. Like it's all this like stock. He used stock images that he like poorly edited out the watermark on and stuff. Like this is just like a money grab, and I'm here for it. Like, how many boomers actually like bought this? Here he's in a trench coat, like he's gonna flash someone. How many boomers do we think actually like bought this? Versus, was it like 2 or 3 boomers bought it, and then everything else was just like ETH degens just trying to flip it?
My dad's in the
Probably.
rare coin business. He does buys and sells rare coins and gold and silver, and you see those commercials where it's like, buy the Trump coin or the 9/11 coin. It's a gold clad, it's
Goes
so it's
down
got
in
like
flames.
a gold leaf around the outside.
Yeah.
It's like $39.99, and it's just something that's worth like $1.
Well,
It's the same thing.
Keep it
right?
going. I'm going to the bathroom, but I'll still hear you guys. Just keep
Okay.
it
Yeah.
going. Don't
Yeah.
take my show in my absence.
All right. He says it as if we want to take his show.
Value. What is valuable? We're right back to that. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the
What
whole-
makes you think your show's worth something?
the Trump thing, I was not interested or involved in that at all, but it just strikes me it's trying to find a way to monetize attention, right? Which is what the whole internet is trying to drive at anyway, right? And like we've seen obviously with Twitter, have been making changes on that regards, and celebrity NFTs is the early and sort of fringe wave of it, but it's kind of forerunning the fact that people will build actual social media platforms with crypto built into it, or crypto for ad payments, or that kind of thing is going to be a huge commercial use case that people who aren't just celebrities can get in on. And so that might also be something we'll see in the next couple of years, once a few people have an idea that it's not just I'm famous, somebody will buy this, whatever it is.
I felt like when I watched it, I thought for a minute, this could be, you could create, you've seen that AI Tom Cruise guy, or these people that look like the guy, or they're able to put AI over the real face and they can act like the real celebrity. You could create your own collection of Tom Cruise cards. You look like Tom Cruise and talk like Tom Cruise. You go do a commercial for him, and everybody thinks it's the legitimate Tom Cruise when it's not. Like, that'd be another. I mean, I don't see. I thought that's
Deep
probably what was
fake
going
NFTs, huh?
on. I assumed that's what was happening. Is someone was using the Trump name without his
No, but
permission.
did you see the ad that he recorded for it?
But I'm saying there's people that can
ad
do
was
that.
brilliant.
Oh, it's great. That's
I
the
loved
thing
it.
about this.
Every moment of it.
This man is, whatever your views on him as a political candidate, whatever else, this dude is. There's no one like him. No one is even close to him in any kind of way. And he's also always been this guy. Like decades ago with the Trump steaks and all the other stuff he's been hawking. Like he's the master at creating a strong personal brand and selling that brand. And the stuff around the brand is like incidental. No one cares. No one cares about that. No one cares about, like, is his hotel the best ever? Probably not. Does it stick out in any way? No. But it's his brand. It's like, and
it's a story. People want to be a part of that story. Yeah.
And the NFT is the purest. It's literally just the brand. There's nothing else to it. He's just selling himself. And so it's at the same time like a brilliant kind of move, especially for someone who like talked smack about crypto back in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that really caught me, is like, he was very much against like Bitcoin, crypto, anything. And here we are a few years later with his own collection trying to jump on that. And I'm like, hey, kind of a net positive if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he caught on to something, so I'll take the win for what it's worth. And, let's move on, right?
Yeah,
let's see where it goes next.
It'll be as irresistible. Like that's exactly the point of adoption of any technology like that, is you can't not use it. It's like Twitter. Like you can't not be on Twitter. And then everyone who hates Elon is still kind of on Twitter because they have to be. And it's because you created a good enough product or a ubiquitous enough product that kind of happens. And I think that's kind of I do think that NFTs are kind of like the big Trojan horse to get people into crypto. Like it's been like the gains were kind of, but like honestly, you could like speculate on cryptos without touching them. You just go to like Coinbase, buy a bunch of crap, go to Binance.us or whatever, which bought Voyager. Yay. I guess. Well, I have a friend who lost some money in that, so it'd be good to have him get some back. But like, and then they just gamble and then get their fiat back out. Like, but with NFTs, they're on a chain. You need crypto to buy it. Like the fact that the programmed in marketplace bit, like you have to buy, like if you have an ETH NFT, you have to spend ETH to get it. If you have like a Polygon one, you have to spend Polygon to get it, etc.
Right.
And it just makes it like now you have a need for this stuff, and then now you can have income directly in this. It's not just like I would like to be paid in Bitcoin. Can I pay in fiat? Fine. It's like, well, we can only pay you in the NFT can only be sold for that, and so that kind of gets people into this thing. It already got Trump, already converted him, right? And so at some point you're going to have like more and more advanced things doing that, and then people are going to be people trying to make money were getting into CeFi, and then they got completely wrecked because of the FTX and the domino effect. But then at some point, DeFi is still there. And so like, let's just say you sell your NFT for ETH or whatever. You buy ETH so you can mint it. You sell it, you make more ETH, and what do you do with that? You put it somewhere and get some of them sweet APYs. And then there you go. That's like a new use case. And then eventually people are like, every investment advisor is like, look, you got to have some of this because we just can't get those gains in the fiat world. Like you're leaving something on the table, and then a bunch of people are, well, I might as well get in here.
Comes back to gains though.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing about gains. So the thing about gains is it's like people. It's literally gains are people doing well, getting what they want, because money is a language for communicating value. Maybe not a perfect language. Definitely old money is definitely not. But like it's basically like, I really want you to chop my wood for me. And I communicate that with money. And so of course people want more money. And of course like, there's this kind of a weird idea people have in their head that like materialism is like bad, kind of. And like I'm one of the less materialistic people you might meet, but like at the same time, like I acknowledge one of the reasons why I don't care that much about money is because I already have almost everything that I would have gotten from money anyway. And so people always want more stuff, more better things.
Well, but the reason I say that is I think what you were right about the Trojan horse of NFTs is that people are using them not necessarily, the Trump NFT, they're not buying it because they expect to get rich off of Trump's NFTs. They're doing it because they want to be part of a club, or I do think NFTs are like a membership stamp or can be used for ticketing, or, it's this odd governance structure that exists. And I think getting the benefit of it without the dollar amount tied to it is what makes that interesting, is people are genuinely using these as decentralized assets. And I shit on NFTs all the time. I think they're pretty silly in their current format, but there's something there. You know what I mean? When you go, I'm not 100% sure what it is, but there's something there.
I mean, I'm looking at NFTs from a certain perspective, right? Like as a digital artist and the products that like we make, the shows that we produce and the content that we develop. If we were doing this, in an analog fashion, right? Paper, pencil, sketching, drawings, ink on acetate and, acrylic paints. Once the film or the commercial or the television show has been produced, then, that medium is already available to the mass audience. But then how does the studio try to recoup some of the costs or the loss from producing the show or the film? And it's usually the body of work that they have still sitting in the office, right? So what they'll do then is just go to like eBay or comic conventions and try to sell, the behind the scenes footage, right? Like here's the original drawings, here's the original cells, here's the original paintings, here's the original this. We don't have that in the digital art world anymore, right? But we still have like all the trials, all the tests, all the video footage that doesn't get used. And to me, I'm looking at that, I'm like, that's a great way to monetize the excess work that we have that's just sitting doing nothing. And I mean, if somebody really likes the film that we produced or the show that we were a part of, and they want to be a part of that too, or take a little piece of ownership in some way, it's like, well, this is kind of a match made in heaven, right? All this access, video content that people would love to see, right? Like the raw building of animation, and they get to have a piece of that. I think from a studio perspective, that's great. That helps, provide some extra capital. Great for the fan because then they get to have a piece of a project that they actually liked.
Yeah.
And I mean, I see there's some benefits there, but it's still, I think NFTs for the most part are still very very new, and there's still a lot of speculation that goes on, right? Because you have the pumpers, like the Bored Apes and all that other stuff. It's very gimmicky and very scammy still, and also studios haven't caught on to that just yet. But I know that Warner Brothers has definitely gotten the NFT bug, and they're starting to produce music content, and I think with Wax they have some comic book stuff on the Wax blockchain. So I mean they're starting to sniff it, and I think my worry is like for the independent who's trying to make a way for themselves. NFTs are great, but then what happens when you get like these gigantic whales like Warner Brothers or Warner Brothers or Disney or the Netflix of the world, where they have just this, they're the closest to the spigot, right, for fiat, and they can buy up massive amounts of tokens and other cryptos and just decimate the space for the independent. So I mean, I think it's interesting, and there's a lot of things that have to get figured out. But I also feel like that window's closing for independence. But
I don't think that at all. Like that's I don't know. I don't get it, right? Because there's no way for these large players to lock out independent creators. Like it's just this whole sort of selling independent NFTs or whatever. It seems to me it's like the next evolution of Patreon, right? That's what it is.
Well,
And
it's not that
Patreon is huge, but there's like
well, it's not that they're going to cut them out. Like they won't be able to have the access, but it's the noise that they'll make, right? When it comes to like their marketing and promotions, and let's say Twitter ad spends will just dominate on that space, and it makes it harder for the independent to really start to make a living when they have to compete against the Netflix and the HBOs and the Disneys. It's
I don't get it though, because isn't that all like how is that different now? Because it's always the case that an independent content creator has to have some small niche and is probably targeting or servicing a group of people that will look for them, basically, right? Anybody who's in any kind of small niche, people go looking for that. They don't just see it on their default, television screen like ad or whatever, right?
Yeah, well, I think
I don't see how that's
like right now it's very lucrative for independents, right? Because the way that it currently is, for independents, it's virtually impossible. I mean, the biggest thing that I can look at is YouTube. You only have a handful of notable, like as far as the animation world goes, there's only a handful of animators who have reached subscriber counts in the millions, view counts in the millions, and then everybody else is hovering in like the hundreds, right? And I mean that's just a split, and then YouTube itself also ends up funding creators and helping them to get more viewership and build the audience platform, versus all the other ones who are still struggling and trying to make it. So that's my only concern, is that we'll have the traditional markets of how they're big right now, and it's hard to break in, and now there's this window of opportunity for the independent to make their way with NFTs in order to say, hey, I can create my fan base, and maybe they're going to be fans for life. I have new marketplaces in which to venture into. But who knows how long that lasts? Because then again, when you have the big players, they just take up a lot of room in the space. It's not that people will not be able to do it and not be able to create, but the level and that they have to compete at. I mean, it's hard now. I can imagine that it gets exponentially harder, later down the line when the big studios finally get a grip on how this stuff works.
You need to create Bitcoin studios.
Yes.
Honestly.
Exactly. Yeah.
You guys got.
You need to be consulting for those
We're
guys.
the ones starving over here. You guys are the ones living it up. But I mean,
I don't get it.
I think that's what it takes is like people to create studios that compete with those big wigs. Because I do think there's there's a little bit of a rejection of corporatism.
Yep.
And the polished thing. That's one thing I think has podcasts and YouTube do is they promote people who are genuine. So someone like Joe Rogan's a good example, right? People love him because he's himself, and he doesn't have this polish of a corporate guy. So yeah, it's hard to do that. It's a rare thing, but it is out there.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
It's just
Jeremy has not talked enough today. I'm going to say that. I'm sorry.
No, the NFTs thing, but I just see it as it's just what you're describing is the process of any technology, right? As the new, more fringe people or whatever, they have to be more experimental to get an edge. And then eventually, like Joel was saying, that becomes undeniable. And then everybody else, the big players are kind of forced to trundle along after it. And so saying, small creators are going to be outcompeted on NFT. Yeah, probably. But then they'll be the next thing, right? NFTs was the last wave of things, and we're now seeing that drift away. And luckily, crypto is dynamic enough that I'm sure the next whatever it will be there for them instead, right? And so that's just going to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that's the thing I've noticed. There's two kind of competing things going along, both positive and negative for decentralization. The negative one is whenever you have problems, like, calamities, small players suffer the most. That's why, you can find rich people in every country. Every country in the world has rich people. They're going to be okay. They're going to figure it out. It's the people that aren't rich that have the problems. And, in, let's say, a country like the UK or Australia or something, if you're poor and you get poorer, you suffer. But if you're poor in Burundi and anything happens, you just starve. You're just destroyed. But the rich people in Burundi are still okay. So there's that one aspect of the big and strong get bigger and stronger because they're better to survive. But when you're talking about not negative effects, you're talking about new things coming around, new technologies, new things, change. Bigger and stronger is also slower. And so every single time you have a turning over of things like technology and administrations or whatever else you want to call it, all other things being equal, the big players always stay at the top or close to the top, but they cede some ground because they weren't first to the party. It was a small, nimble actor that kind of got in. And so, for example, you take the music industry, and its calcifiedness forever. And then you had file sharing came around, shook up a lot, and the big studios are still, I don't have data on this. I guess Esteban would have a more granular, actual knowledge, but they're still around. But they got a little shaken up by stuff like, say, Spotify and stuff. And now a random person could just go viral on Spotify and make a lot of money, where it was harder. They'd have to get noticed by a studio, get promoted, et cetera, et cetera. And then now that's the same thing with the NFT boom now, where the big studios are not doing NFTs, or they weren't. And then small creators were jumping the line through NFTs. And then at some point the studios come in, and then they kind of they're still on top, but they're not as on top as they were with the previous medium, because every new turning over gives a little guy a little bit more of a piece. And so that's kind of my thought of with crypto on the whole is you really don't think the Federal Reserve is going to start running some Bitcoin mining pools at some point? Like,
Probably are.
that's what I'm saying. At some point, all the big actors and all the big banks, and they're not going to just go away. They're going to be part of the new system. But there's also a lot of people like, let's say, the Coinbases of the world who were nobodies, and then they started with crypto, and now they're a big player, right? And just all like the Bitcoin trillionaires or whatever who come out, like, Vitalik. I mean, just a random kid, Now he's just like this big player in the financial system of the world of the future, because he was part of this whole thing. He's like now neck and neck with these like big banks and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I see each turning over.
Coinbase has this massive head start on Bank of America or JP Morgan, right? They've been in it, they understand it, and they understand their customer base far better than those other companies. I don't know. I mean, I think this is divergent from our conversation, but crypto really spells some disaster for banks unless they find ways to insert themselves in some way.
Yeah.
There's a bank in my area that recently tried to offer like Bitcoin savings. I forgot what the product was, but and I forgot the name of the bank. I'm gonna have to check in on them at a chamber meeting. But I thought it was pretty interesting that they were even trying.
Like they'd custody the coins and
that
I think
something
it'd be great for a lot of people. I think I'd love to see people get into that.
But the thing that I find really interesting too is that the concept of like, I don't know, maybe this is just from my perspective because I'm in it now. I'm like, this is great. I like it. It's made my life much more. It's improved my life for the better. Not rich or anything by a long stretch, but the quality of my life has definitely gotten better. And I can see like how this can benefit a working, type of individual in a massive way. And knowing that there's bigger, fish in the sea that are just as hungry, and at some point we'll get into that space too. And I look at the artists and the animators, at least some of the ones that I've come across in the circles, and they're just like, no, I won't touch crypto, right? There's all this other FUD that they're still swallowing, and it's like, no, this is your opportunity, this is your chance, to make something for yourself. Who cares if it's going to be like this big gain or whatever? It's like, but now you have a way to have commerce between you and your audience, right? You and your patron directly, right? And you don't have to worry about the PayPal or the Venmo or the Patreon or the Subscribe Star or whatever other payment processing channel that you're going to say something out of line. It's like, no, now you have the ability to say what you really think, and speak to your audience and have direct communication and direct commerce with them. Like that's a big thing, right? It's kind of like designs back in the 90s. You're making a comic book, you're not going to get a giant comic book publisher, so you're hitting the copy machines, photocopying your books, and then going out there to the Comic Cons or walking around the neighborhood trying to get people to buy your stuff direct. And yeah, you might not have made a lot of money, but it was yours, and the customers that you were dealing with were, they knew who you were, and there was a better relationship than, having a Marvel right now who, can't tell, their ass from their elbow at this point. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I want people to jump in and see that there's a really big benefit. Like there's a better world, right? And we don't have to stay in the system right now,
Yeah, and it's going to be more and more interesting as time goes on. That's one thing I liked about like the FTX collapse is FTX is like a big monolithic institution, or was, and we don't need more of those. We only need as many of those as just the market decides need to exist. And so when these kinds of things collapse, that kind of gets democratized, the whole thing. I might as well put up on the thing my favorite tweet of the year, possibly, is a picture of Caroline Ellison, his SBF's compatriot and said,
Yoda.
yes. And person doesn't have very many followers, but it still went pretty. It affected culture. It said, "Bro had a net worth of 16 billion USD and risked it all for this. The grippy must have been unfathomable." So since that point, I've referred to this unfortunate individual as Grippy, old Grippy, because unfortunate, but it's true. It's just, and if you look up, I've actually done some experiments on Twitter looking up the term Grippy, and there's a lot of Grippy sock stuff, like like socks with like treads on the bottom, but now this individual trends high in the Twitter Grippy search engine thing. So like, I'm pretty sure that tweet is what sparked the meme that this is old Grippy now.
I like that Joel's crowbarring this meme. Like there was totally left field. You just decided you had to talk about this.
Yes, listen, it's my show. I do whatever the fuck I want.
I had a couple of drinks, and all right, this is how we're running at this point.
I've been sitting on that tweet to put up on the screen for almost an hour at this point. So it's not like it came out of nowhere. This is premeditated assault. No,
this is evil, man. I think
it's such a weird world we're living in, and like the SBF saga is, I'm sure like all the like TMZ type people like it for obvious reasons, but I like all the smart people also like it for maybe different reasons. But like, it's so fascinating how this is how the old world used to work, right? You had a person who is very strongly connected to the old things, jump to the top, and then when something bad happens, they all circle the wagons and everything ends up, getting kind of brushed under the rug. But this is kind of a unique situation. And first off, the rise was astronomical and fast, way faster than whoever else would be like the puppet of the old system would be. And then because of chain analytics and things, because of not privacy, but the radical transparency of the crypto world, people were able to see that there was a problem with FTX. Like they were able to be like, even though we don't know their books and stuff, there's something going on. All it takes is this one crazy Chinese dude to like just flick over that first domino. Just use Twitter, right? And honestly, it was just Twitter. It was some whale bot saw that they were dumping a lot of the FTT token, and then CZ just says, "Oh, we just saw stuff we didn't like. We're not trying to rock the market." I mean, yeah, sure. And then sinks the whole thing. And then this thing just kind of goes, and then you see the old school media try to be like, no, this guy's actually a hero and all this stuff. No one bought that nonsense for like no time. And then now, his co-conspirators are like selling him out, and now he's going down kind of hard. But it's all playing out live, and it's kind of a crazy, like, if this had happened 30 years ago, FTX would probably be the number one crypto exchange still, and would have special status from the government, and would be regulating its competitors into oblivion. Instead, we have this just giant crash going on, and now a bunch of the most evil anti-crypto politicians have ties, financial ties to this individual. And it's a glorious thing to see. It's like this collapse is made from the modern era. And I'm kind of glad to see how far we've evolved to be able to have such a glorious collapse.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing. I'm still on the FTX is a state-sponsored attack, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that rise to stardom so fast, so quick, and the fact that so many politicians got bought off, and the fact that this guy gets a slap on the wrist essentially right now. He's just roaming free at mommy and daddy's, and
there's not anymore. He's in jail, right?
Well, he got bailed out.
He got bailed out.
He got bailed out. I hadn't thought that.
He's at home back with his parents.
But wait, there's more.
Mom's living in his parents' basement.
Yeah, and so I mean, just the fact that you could see the spider web of connections that he's had. I mean, this guy was. I think he was the Jeffrey Epstein of the crypto world, and without I don't know the sex parties that happen afterwards is debatable, but the fact that he has the spider web that's connected to just about every single person, place, and thing. It's like, yeah, that this is not an accident, And then the fact that the regulators have been foaming at the mouth, and salivating at the gate, waiting to get in, and now here's their opportunity, and all the stuff just kind of one thing after another after another. To me, I'm just like, yeah, there's a lot of coincidences here.
Do you think, because there's a conspiracy theory of mine, do you think the Bitcoin community has been infiltrated heavily by the state?
I don't know, honestly. I've heard so many things about big businesses like MasterCard and the digital currency group and all this stuff that's come to play. But if I'm really looking at it too, I mean, you could say that for just about every crypto that's currently out there right now.
Well, like specifically, what's bothered me it's been a couple years now is this U.S. dollar on Bitcoin rails.
Yeah, I think I've heard that on a lot of the spaces. Like, not a lot of people are for it. With Taro saying that, we can put a stable coin, through the Lightning Network. Isn't that a great thing? And everybody's going like, no, because that's how you get regulatory capture, right?
Well, this is what Strike has been talking about, right?
Well, it's not just you get regulatory capture. That's how you get a shitcoin on Lightning Rails.
Yeah. Well, but what it's doing is it's
isn't the whole point
the
of
Lightning Network.
Yeah,
it's basically using, because when Strike is like, because they had one last week, so and so gave me their bank account information or gave me his phone number, and I was able to deposit money in his African bank account. I was putting U.S. dollars in his bank account.
Yeah.
Via Bitcoin, and I'm like, well, how is that Bitcoin? Right? That's
I'm still trying to figure
Bitcoin
out how,
for a split second. It's like I'm going to convert it, move it over, convert it back. It's like borrowing the Lightning Network.
Yeah, I don't know how Strike works, right? And
Jeremy's going nuts over here.
Yeah, he's multiplying.
He's got 2 cameras now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Strike works. I'm a skeptic,
Yeah.
about all of this stuff, right? I'm using, what I use because, number one, for me, it makes my accounting simpler, right? Any type of, I'm just looking at things about, regulatory, like the regulators and what could happen, and trying to stay as robust as I can, right? But when it comes to like these large companies, and sometimes the things I don't agree with either is cheering and chanting for institutional investors to get involved in the space, right? Because most of the institutions are not about crypto. They're not about, sovereignty. They're not about, Bitcoin they're about fiat, right?
Yeah, of course.
They're pro fiat. And I have an issue with that, and I think it sounds great, right? Because again, everybody wants to find some way to get it ahead. They want that edge to be able to front run inflation, or to get in front of their monetary problems. I get it, but I think the focus should really just be on adoption and usage, and not trying to say, okay, we can't wait till Apple gets into Bitcoin or to anything else, right? We can't wait till Visa and MasterCard, have a partnership with the Litecoin Foundation or with Bitcoin Cash, right? I'm like, who gives a fuck? That shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be like, can we use this? Is this working? Right? How do we protect what we've made?
Well, the reason I asked that was because, Joel, you mentioned like the SBF has this massive rise to prominence and all these dollars get poured into it. Like I see the same thing when I look at like Bitcoin Magazine, that digital currency group. They own all these media outlets, and there's been massive amounts of money like that go to Blockstream and all these different Bitcoin companies, and it just starts going, what is going on, right? Like what's the catch? Because this isn't a charity. These people aren't doing this out of the goodness of their heart.
The catch is like everyone's looking for their bag, and at some point, I think, rather than being like a conspiracy theorist and all this kind of stuff, I think that anytime there's a good thing, people try to profit from the good thing, but then they try to be like, well, now that I've profited, how can I make sure only I profit?
Right.
Ooh, wait, I got beer service. That's very nice.
Nice.
I was already drinking a
That's a
beer, but I guess I'm
fancier
drinking
one.
a different beer. Thank you.
That's a fancier one.
See, this is why y'all should not remain single.
Well,
There's some perks. Anyway,
I had my beer sitting here. No one was serving me beers. It didn't matter.
but so the thing is, like for example, like I guess this is as close as we'll get to the block size wars in the entire thing. At some point, like I don't know, does anyone here love Blockstream, the company? Or
I'm indifferent, to be honest.
So you're the closest, and that's good enough, right? So Blockstream, like it's a company seeking profit, like any company. A lot of people involved with Blockstream also were involved with the Bitcoin core team and other things like that. And Blockstream's end product seems to be Liquid, right? That's the number one product it has. It's like a moneymaker, I guess, which is a federated sidechain. It's like a other scaling / whatever solution. So since the beginning, Blockstream and people influenced by it, I guess, or trying to make money off of Bitcoin through this one avenue of like an off-chain scaling solution. And they also like invested a whole bunch in like Lightning stuff, although it seems like Blockstream's like connection to Lightning has kind of gotten a little weaker. Like it seems like they're trying to pimp Liquid, but that's a different story. But the point is, it kind of went that way. And so in order to promote these products, there had to be a not promotion of what doesn't make the money, which is just people using Bitcoin regularly. And so at some point we had the block size war, and we had like a divergence of opinion, let's just say, of how to scale Bitcoin. And while obviously I have strong feelings on this stuff, let's put those aside for a while and just give the facts of the off-chain scaling solution to Bitcoin. They did not become mature until relatively recently. And so there was a gap of a few years at least where cheap, effective payments was not BTC, right? Bitcoin's strong suit. And so in those times, you had a lot of people who were invested in Bitcoin having to sort of like scramble to figure out what else to do, right? Where it's like, okay, well, Bitcoin does all these awesome things. The thing people have been talking about a lot was payments. That's not so awesome yet for another couple years, or however long it was going to take or whatever. In the meantime, well, it still is a relatively decentralized system as far as like the running of it, like the proof of work aspect. It's well distributed. The founder is like gone, or Craig Wright. Sorry, he's going to appear now.
Yep.
So
yeah, Craig Wright's in the chat now. All
oh
right.
God. So Richard Hart too. Anyway, so then at some point you're like, well, it's good for this. It's like, it's really a transparent, reliable kind of ledger in this way. And then you have all these like narratives coming around it to be like, well, what's next? And it's not like we'll adopt it more because you can't, because it doesn't work for payments at this moment, really. So you got to be like, well, the technology's great, like understandably, it sparked the whole crypto revolution. So what about institutions? Or when are they going to buy in? Well, what about, can we get legal tender laws approved? Can we do these other things? And then you had all these like entities kind of promoting, like leaning heavy into whatever Bitcoin had at the moment without, because they couldn't promote like the transactional aspect as well anymore, So during this specific period of time, you had a lot of that. And then you have a lot of like, I think that's where the modern maximalist comes from, right? Is that era of where you have like the Corys, Clipstons of the world, or the Max Kaisers, or the Michael Saylors, or whatever, that their whole MO is not like, I'm going to promote Bitcoin's best aspects. It's more, well, I'm going to promote some of that, but I'm also going to get really hard into the braggadocious, like, this is Bitcoin is perfect, immaculate conception, everything else is a cult kind of thing, and like, oh, just hammering hard, everything's a shit coin except Bitcoin kind of thing, and like kind of approaching it from a position of weakness maybe, but from a necessary weakness, I guess. And so that's kind of how we end up where we're at today, with a lot of like confusing narratives. And one thing I've kind of noticed, usually Bitcoin Bitcoin has been around since 2009, right? It's the base code is like pretty well worked through. There's not really inflation bugs anymore. There's like, well, that we know of, right? But there's a lot, like, it's all pretty worked through. It should be the safest bet in a bear market. However, these last few months, like Litecoin and Monero especially, but also Bitcoin Cash, also Dash, also Zcash have been doing really well against Bitcoin, because I feel like there was this layer of shitcoinery fluff on top of like a solid base product, where for the years it was the most solid base product. But over the last several years, with like the whole new wave maximalism, started like pumping this volcano energy and all this weird nonsense and like laser eyes and just like all this like stuff. Now you had this like speculative shitcoinery bubble on top of its value that then burned off. Whereas for the first time ever, probably, there were altcoins, as it were, that just didn't have that fluff on top, that had less fluff somehow than Bitcoin. And then, yeah, and that's kind of where we're at today. I don't know if you guys have sort of noticed that.
Well, because Litecoin, we're associated with Dogecoin with the merge mining. And so like I've kind of started to understand Dogecoin a bit more. And that, Bitcoiners will be like, well, Elon pumped Dogecoin, without realizing like, well, what is Michael Saylor then? It's the same thing. Like, you can't claim everybody else is a shill, and you guys have all honest, beautiful people. Sorry, we're not picking on Bitcoin, but we are at the same time.
I mean, I can get. Well, hey, when you're the belle of the ball, you're going to attract attention. That's just the way things.
True, yeah, and
that's the ironic thing here, right? Is that Bitcoin had the huge advantage with the brand and the perceived reliability, and what Joel's describing is that's now
the
gone.
Programming genius of Craig, right?
Dude, he's in my house, like.
He's in your head.
Well, and here's my, like, honestly, because I had this week. I go through waves. I was really pissed at Maximus for a long time. I let it go for a while. Just this last couple weeks, I'm back on this shit again. And this guy came in. One of my regulars comes in. He's like, "Why do you care? Why do you care?" And I'm like, to me, it's because like there's a responsibility, right? You guys do carry the brand of crypto, and Bitcoiners are the face of cryptocurrency in this what we want to call peer-to-peer decentralized cash, whatever you want to call it. And I do think there's a level of responsibility and disappointment on people who have been here for a while, going, gosh, you have such an opportunity, you have such a voice, and you're just going to get up there and talk about $100,000 rather than talk about self-sovereignty and talk about, I do like they still talk about remittances, and I have seen some good things that don't get publicized enough about. I think Bitcoiners are very charitable. And that's something I wish I want to do more as a Litecoiner. Mm-hmm. But I think that's probably what gets to me the most is, man, you got a golden opportunity to build a broad crypto community, because to say, I know you got beef with Bitcoin Cash, but like Bitcoin Cash follows the same rules that Bitcoin does as far as like its governance structure. And so does Dogecoin, and so does Zcash, and so does Monero, right? These all are very similar in the way they work, and why aren't we instead promoting free markets and that people should be allowed to use what they want to use? And if a person's allowed to hold their own assets, that's the primary goal here, right? And so I think that's what gets me going, is I just get fired up. Like, here's some guy with 400,000 followers just promoting shitcoin qualities, even though he's a Bitcoiner. He's promoting it like a shitcoiner. How about that?
Shitcoinery is a state of mind.
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of things that you're saying, right? Like, yeah, as Bitcoiners, they have a responsibility because they're carrying the torch the highest, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I find it weird too. Maybe again, this is my perspective. Like, why are we calling ourselves Litecoiners, Bitcoiners, and all that, right? I mean, we're not calling ourselves dollarists, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
You know, I mean, this. I'm coming from a very
Now, listen,
pragmatic
there
point
are
of view.
some Tether maximalists out there. Believe it or
Dude,
not.
I've met
They're all Bitcoiners though.
yeah,
I'll tell you
I've
that.
met nano maximalists, right? It's just really interesting to me that we were so willingly wanting to tribalize, right? It's like, dude, this is money. It's not a fucking sports team, right?
But the thing is, I think it is. I think like a lot of people are confused about why is crypto so tribal and why is there so much infighting and stuff. But to me, it makes perfect sense. And the reason is very simple: is that as mass adoption kind of gets nearer and nearer, if you get on a run and you get a lot of network effect as a money, you will just crush the competition. That's what's going to happen. Like we've seen this huge explosion in cryptos, and now the field is starting to slim down, which is what Joel was already talking about.
Yeah.
And absent scaling issues, which has been the current cap for Bitcoin and then also for Ethereum, if something gets on a run and can have enough tech or enough ability to maintain low fees and grow, then it will just start crushing out everything else because everybody will be actually using it as money, right? So because of that, you've got to be playing the win. Like if your crypto community is not playing the win, it's you've already lost by default.
Yeah.
So trying to be too friendly, like I don't know.
Well, so
Well,
there's let me
go ahead.
hit some layers of nuance into that thing. So yes, true. That being said, where there's perfect overlap. Obviously, there's competition, right? So, like for example, there's like Zcash and Z Classic and Ycash and all the Zcash forks. There's a bunch of them for some reason. They all can't really coexist. They can't all make it in the long term, right? And I would even argue, like maybe even Zcash and Monero can't coexist over the very long period of time. Maybe, I don't know, but there will be, you know, obviously a few different smart contract chains, a few different payment chains. That will kind of like work out. But also have an alternative theory on the crypto community thing, because it's so weird that like people do get tribalist about products sometimes. Like, oh, you're an Android user, I'm an iPhone user. They get a little bit, but it's nowhere near crypto. Like where, like in 2017, the Monero people tried to hire a hitman to take me out, which is pretty fucking hilarious. But like, that's insane. That insane level of tribalism is not a product-related tribalism. It's something else. And I kind of realized that in this early day of crypto, where you pretty much the biggest thing you can do with crypto is buy it and it goes up. That's like still the number one use case for crypto is number go up, sadly enough, but it's still true. It's this weird social phenomenon where if I am let's just say Monero person, and I have Monero, if I buy into an idea, and if I defend the idea and make the idea stronger, I own a part of the idea that then more people buy into, and then I am better off. And so for the first time in maybe human history, I don't know, you can literally just like invest in a cult, kind of. And then the more you get people into the cult, it goes up. And so it's like I try to like understand it's not just people being dumb. It's people acting in their very best self-interest, where it's like, oh, I like this idea. I subscribe with this. It's like an investment-based religion almost, where if you get more people in the religion, you don't benefit unless you're running the church and you're getting the money. Really, you kind of do. But if this is a religion where you own stock in the church, now you really want people on board, because then it it goes up. So that's why that's the real reason why people get super like tribalistic. And like if you're I've noticed this as well, the communities with the least monetization options are the most crazy and tribalist. Like the nano people are everywhere. Like I don't know if you see them, they're very active, and that's because Nano doesn't pay anyone anything. There's no treasury, there's no proof of work, there's no proof of stake, there's no nothing. It's just there. So the only way, there's no like quiet miner just like working away, making their money there. In order to make money, you have to be like, Nano's the best, buy Nano, let's do it, and then pump your token in that kind of way. And so it's kind of like Nano is one of those most purest cryptos in the sense of you're buying into an idea, and then you get to have other people buy into the idea, and then you profit from that. And then you get something, let's say like Zcash, where you got a company that's getting paid from the block reward. You got a foundation, you got a community grants things all being paid there, and then miners are being paid as well. And then I think they're going to proof of stake at some point, so then it'd be anyone who stakes can be paid as well. And then it's like, no reason to be loud, and no reason to grow this like cult because we're all getting paid. And it's kind of interesting how those dynamics, those token dynamics, kind of work with human psychology.
Well, yeah, and that's again where I go back to the price. If your whole goal is price, the whole idea is price, what you're saying is 100% true. And if your whole goal is that you want people to have access to sound money and be able to hold their own assets and privately transact, then you should say like, look, yeah, I prefer Litecoin and I like the Litecoin community. I like some of the things they're doing. But like if Jeremy wants to use Bitcoin Cash, I don't care. Like how does that impact me? I have no problem with that.
Yep.
And I don't think that it's a scam. Bitcoin Cash isn't a scam as much as Bitcoiners want to say that. It's its own thing. It's just a different iteration of the original idea. And I was fortunate, Charlie Lee's been very cool. He comes and talks to us a lot. And I had this conversation with him, like the idea that Satoshi, when he came up with 10-minute 1 megabyte blocks, that the divine inspiration was that was the perfect solution. I think that's kind of crazy to think that he was going to know what is this going to mean in 30, 40, 50 years. And so if somebody wants to come in and say, we're going to do 2.5 minute blocks, let's try it. Or somebody says we're going to do 32 megabyte blocks. Okay. Slowly we're going to start to understand what are the trade-offs and what do people really want. And I don't think rejecting people's experiments is a good thing. I think, let them flourish, let them do their thing. And if it proves itself out to be better for everybody than what I'm promoting or what I'm into, then good. I'd rather have that in the long run.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
fence it off in a way.
I'm 100% on with that. I mean, honestly, again, I don't know what the future holds, right? I don't know what's really ultimately going to work. And ultimately, in the free market, if you want to transact with the token of choice, by all means, have at it, right? I mean, I get paid in different currencies, and I just decided to swap out for Bitcoin. I'm not going to. I'm not going to get paid, right?
That's what I tell Maxwell. Like, if you want to use it, knock yourself out. I got no problem with Bitcoin. It's the beginning of it all. It's great.
Yeah, do what you need to do, right? I mean, again, I don't like big communities. I don't.
You should join Bitcoin Cash then.
Yeah. Do you have fingerless gloves on?
Baby.
One of my very good friends is a Bitcoin casher. So
it's like the idea of the cult and the group and all that. They're nano maximalists. I met my first ever Dogecoin maximalist, right?
So
I mean, they're all there.
Really quick question on that person.
Yeah.
When did this person become a Dogecoin maximalist? Not a Dogecoin fan, but a maximalist.
It was almost like day one. And I think it was probably during he hasn't been in crypto for a long time. He was a big fan of the Dogecoin millionaire, right? And so he wanted to emulate, what he was doing. And I mean, hey, look, that's all you, right? If you want to go in that route, by all means, I really don't care. If that's the money you want to use, that's the money you want to hold, that's the money you want to spend, by all means, use it. And I really, if the competitions of ideas is what is going to play out, I mean, I think I would rather have that than, the tribal, too much tribalism. And I do think it's good that, people criticize. And that's the thing I would let, from a Bitcoin, perspective, I use it and all that. But I would like to see more criticism from within the community as well, And I know that there's large arguments and debates within, the development teams and, on GitHub and everywhere else. And that's great. But I think, and I don't know how it's like in the other communities, because I mean, that's not something I'm really into is like community, for this brand or subreddit that. I mean, I don't care, honestly. I'm if there's any community that I'm really interested in, it's my local community, right? Like just the people around me, and I don't have enough capacity to worry about everybody online. But it's to have that criticism and honest critique about the products that are used, the things that are working that aren't working, and it should be welcomed, right? And
But I think that's, yeah, like, can I just jump in that, like, yeah, so that the thing is, maximalists are good for a coin, right? This is what people don't really understand. So there's a big difference between being an asshole to everyone else, right? Which is one part that's got associated with it, and being a maximalist for a coin. Like, if you think about it, the biggest contributors to every single coin are maximalists for that coin. That doesn't mean they need to be shoving off someone else, but by definition, the biggest players, the people who spend their whole life on a particular coin are doing the dev, big in their community or whatever. It's because they're like this one and kind of not the others. That doesn't mean you have to be intolerant of them, but it does mean you have to have a strong, particular favorite for your one, right? So at the end of the day, at a meta level, like, the cryptos that are going to succeed are going to be the ones that attract these like strong groups of maximalists who commit to that idea. So it's actually very healthy for a coin to have a lot of maximalists. The problem that Bitcoin has almost uniquely, and Ethereum started to get it as more and more, prominence rose up in their community, was it became not we're going to win because we're the strongest community that are doing our project the best, but that kind of we're not doing enough of that. And so we got to start shitting on everyone else, or like saying you're a security or doing whatever, trying to tear down other people rather than build up their own tower the fastest kind of thing. And that's where a lot of the grief comes into it. Nobody's saying you can't be a huge fan of your coin, but the problem is if you're a huge fan of your coin by shitting on everyone else's, basically.
Yeah, there's got to be a poverty of the language here. There's got to be a term that works better, because maximalist or maxi or maxipad or whatever else you want to call them it refers to usually like a dumb person who believes strongly in one project and thinks everything else is a scam, kind of, or just not worth paying attention to, without information driving that choice, really, without like constant like reevaluation of the information.
Or that everything else goes to zero, even if that's not good for other people. Like, I don't care. The point is, I win, you lose. That's the mentality, right?
Yeah, and there's I don't know what a better term is, but like you could have like a majorist, maybe not a maximalist, but like,
or extremist,
a lover,
a majorist.
Yes. But like it's something like that where
Litecoin lover. I'm a Litecoin lover.
Where like someone thinks my project that I like is the best one I know. Other ones might be good, but I'm just going to focus. I don't have any interest in the other ones. This is the one I'm interested in. This is the one I think is the best. But that's different from that. Like, well, there might be some value out there. I just think, for me, this is the most value, and I'm focusing on this. And that's an okay perspective. It's just that the exclusionary maximalism, the rabid maximalism, the dishonest maximalism, all that stuff kind of takes front and center. And it's hard to have someone who's like a pro, let's just say like a Bitcoiner, like a Bitcoin first kind of a person who's also reasonable. There's very few of those kinds of people out there. It's more like you're an insane maximalist kind of person, or you're a pure on multi-coiner. But
see, I kind of take the opposite view. I think there actually are a lot of people who are very, even keel about it, and really the loudest voices tend to be the smallest camps.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's absolutely true.
So I mean, that's why I'm like,
Well, who are the major Bitcoin voices that you see them go, hey, here's Thorchain. This is pretty cool. Outside of Eric Voorhees, like, this is kind of a cool tool that people can use to exchange currencies.
So unfortunately,
I don't. That's what I don't hear. I don't hear it. Like, and again,
well, here's the thing, though. It's the way like the social systems work, where you have a reasonable person, and then because the extreme unreasonable people attack them so much, that pushes them more into an adversarial camp. It kind of draws the battle lines. So, like, for example, you could have people like Udi. I don't remember. I can't say his last name, but that Udi fellow.
Wertheimer, yeah.
And Eric Wall, and then there's like a few, and I guess was Nick Carter is another one.
Mhm.
And like there's a bunch of those people out there that are mostly Bitcoiners, right? They're strong Bitcoiners, but because they weren't 100% exclusive, they got rejected by the Maximus cult, and now their dialogue tends to be not as Bitcoin positive as I'm sure it would organically be, because the standard bearers for Bitcoin, right? The unfortunately, really unfortunately,
That's what
the
I'm saying. The
the
community is
Maximus
sending you a
made
message
them.
in that.
Yeah, so like how many times do you see Udi say something nice about Bitcoin versus something nice about Ethereum to mock the Bitcoiners or something? Even though he's still mostly a Bitcoin guy as far as I know.
He
But
is,
like
yeah. He shits on Ethereum all the time, actually.
his mind share though is it's really hard to be super it's really hard to be like 80 to 90% pro Bitcoin, because it like once you diverge from the 100%, the 100%ers tend to attack you enough to where now you're like down to like a 60 or a 50. Like it's really hard to just maintain what you'd like to be.
But see, I think that's more of a them problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care.
I mean, but I mean, Jameson Lopp.
I was gonna say
What
the
do you,
newest shit
I mean,
coiner on the
that's like
block.
a guy you go, this is as pure crypto guy as you can ask for, and he's constantly working to help, see how robust currencies are. I mean, he's done so much work for so many years, and the fact there's anybody that would sit there and shit on him because he's part of a company that accepts Ethereum, it's a free market. Like if there's a market for him to access as a company,
Yeah,
what is the harm in that? Like I don't even understand why.
me either. But
It
again,
boggles
I
my
feel
mind.
like that's a them problem.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm responsible for myself. I'm not responsible for anybody
fair
else.
enough.
I don't care what anybody really does with their tokens or what they say. I mean, yeah, there's some people that I've looked at, but not looked to, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like how I go about myself. I like Bitcoin again for my purposes and reasons, and what stood out for me the most. But that's me going through the emotions too, right? Like
Mhm.
I remember when I first started, I had all kinds of tokens and coins that I was reading the white papers, I was doing the homework that I could, and I just came to a conclusion for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? As far as everybody else goes, I mean, I don't know many people who have actually read the white papers of the coins they've bought into, right?
Mhm.
And that just seems to be the case for just about everything that you could go for. I mean, even in the precious metals community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no, I like this mining company better than the other one, and then you start getting these little fan clubs within that in itself, and I just find it's a little ridiculous. It's to me, anyways. I find it's rather silly.
Yeah. And
This is
that's
a
the
super interesting point, though, I think, because it's like you're saying it's a them problem, and you're right, but it's kind of beholden on crypto's in this weird space where it's a decentralized thing. Nobody independently is like you're the face of whatever, even if you founded the coin, right? But on
Mm-hmm.
another hand, people who are bigger voices in a particular community do a lot to sort of shape the narrative and direction of the vibe of the coin. And that's one of the most interesting things about crypto is all the different coins, generate their own divergent culture at a certain point, right? So I think that's what we're going to see more of. I think we have been seeing more of that is as in the BTC community, particularly as things like fracture up a bit, you're seeing like Joel was saying, sort of more of a split there as some people just double down on like, no, we're the inner circle and like screw the rest of you. And some people are trying to play it more evenly. So like, yeah, for instance, you might be doing a great job in terms of spreading that message to the rest of the Bitcoin community. And I think we'll see it play out over the next year or two as to which side is able to kind of get control of the public opinion.
But I mean, it's if we all believe in the free market, then I mean, we got to let these ideas compete,
mm-hmm.
and let the best idea, surface to the top. And I'm all for that, right? I mean, I'll admit, seeing some of the drama between intercoin, sparring matches is fun, but I mean, at the same time, for me, my thing is like, how do I pay my bill? How do I pay
Mm-hmm.
my people? How do I take care of my family? How do I make sure the missus is able to, get gas and buy food? Like everything else outside of that to me is just pure noise.
Yeah, and that's where we get back to like the digital cash maximalism point of like, first off, once you use the stuff, your perspective changes a lot. Like what works, what doesn't. And like I would have been like mostly a Bitcoiner my entire career here if it weren't for the block size wars making it more difficult to like pay my everyday bills. Like I didn't change my opinions. In fact, I remember Mike Hearn when he did his big rage quit of like the Bitcoin core team. At the time, I was like kind of scoffing at him a little bit. Like I was like, whatever, we're gonna be fine without you, sort of. Which is one of the stupidest things I've thought in my crypto career. Let's be honest, is like because he was right in a lot of things, but like I was like, man, whatever, we're gonna be fine. Laser eyes, I don't know. And then at some point, my life became more difficult, where I'm like, oh, I'm having to wait an hour walking around this fucking shopping mall before I can buy this thing because this thing. And like, oh, I had to skip lunch because I didn't get a confirmation in time, and like it started to hit my life, and I had to like make some adjustments. And so it's really easy to be like an armchair quarterback thing. And one thing I think is funny, I did some post on Twitter the other day. Anytime I bitch about the Lightning Network, it's amazing for engagement, right? So I'm never stopping. I'm sorry.
I'd probably respond. I'll admit.
Yeah, it's great for engagement, and there's a certain point at which you get enough engagement that it's like not organic anymore. Now you get all like the shills, and I love answering those shills because they're all like shilling their own product that does not help me at all. Because what I was trying to do with Lightning, which I ended up doing successfully, was buy a one-time like Visa gift, like Visa card online, digital Visa card. I was trying to do that on Pay with Moon, and there was some issue with the Phoenix wallet when I was doing the thing, and I had to fix that. Anyway, they only take Bitcoin, and then they take a few different ones through Coinbase Pay, but who's going to use custodial garbage? I mean, come on. So I'm like that's my thing, and then people are saying like, oh, this never happened. You should look into Algorand. I'm like, how does Algorand help me? Like I'm literally a person who uses like, let's just say 80 to 90% Dash for my payments, and I have some Bitcoin here, some Litecoin there, some Bitcoin Cash over here, some Zcash and Monero here that I use, and you're just shilling me some. No offense to the actual project that is Algorand, but some absolute bullshit that does nothing for me. And they're like, well, Nano, I can't buy fuck with Nano. I can't buy anything, right? And it's like, well, you should like, no, it doesn't solve any problem. It makes my life worse.
Yeah. This is the problem of the open forums, right? Yeah. I mean, all discussions are just tossed out there, and people want to chime in. I mean, their opinions are free. It's but I feel you, man. It's one of those things where, again, like honest criticism, because you're a user, right? That's the thing that I've really found too, like how many people actually use the crypto they hold. Yeah.
You want some statistics? You want some interesting statistics?
I'd love to. Yeah.
I shared this with Joel because
is this the BitPay thing?
Yeah, that's a great stat.
Let me.
It's very telling. I'm gonna tell you two things about that I find interesting.
Yeah,
Jeremy, you're not gonna like this.
Let me.
No, I am. I already know what you're gonna say. I've got the cat ready to go.
Here we go. It's
so Litecoin didn't even get on. Litecoin was not even on BitPay until like July of 21, because there was a holdout. I think there was some association with maybe even Roger, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think it was an investor, a minority investor, but I don't think he ever told them not to list Litecoin.
So since Litecoin's been on there, it's grown. So last month it was Bitcoin was like 41% of payments. Litecoin was 27.
It is on the screen right now, by the way.
Doge was like 9%, and Ethereum was like 11, something like that. But between Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin, it was like 80% of the payments came from those three chains.
Yeah,
and Bitcoin Cash was like 3%. I'm sorry, Jeremy. No one's using Bitcoin Cash.
It was higher, but it dropped off, and I can tell you why. But anyway, finish your point, and then I'll explain.
No, but I think what is interesting about that is that the people using the assets I think that points to the speculative nature of what's. I mean, Bitcoin still is number one, but to think how prominent it is, and that it's not a resounding number. It's not like 90% of people are using Bitcoin, or it's not like 60-30 Bitcoin Ethereum. What it tells you is that the dollar value of the market cap is not reflective of what assets are people actually using. Because I encourage people to spend, because I think if you're not spending it, if you're not using it regularly, then it kind of invalidates the purpose of these things. And I think merchants will stop seeing. They'll go, well, why would I take it?
Right, because there's
why
no
do I need to
demand.
accept cryptocurrency if nobody spends it, right?
Right. Yeah, because there has to be demand for it, right?
Exactly.
And I encourage people to spend as well. And these numbers don't sound that far off from what Serge was saying from Bitrefill about what they see from the people using buying gift cards from them.
Yes,
I think Monero's pretty big using when they can, right? Monero's a spender.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to know that Monero's being spent.
Well, I mean,
you can know in aggregate, not any individual.
Nobody's using Algorand. Well, I tell you what, nobody was using a BitPay. Nobody's using stable coins. That surprises me maybe the most. Like, it's like less than 0.5% is stable coins if you look at those stats.
No, because those are for the traders.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Although I have to say, so the Bitrefill is anyone who hasn't had like a good chat with Sergey of Bitrefill should, because first off, the guy's like I wouldn't say maybe a Bitcoin. I guess he's a Bitcoin maximalist, maybe, but he's like a Bitcoin pro Bitcoiner. But he's also brutally honest, and he runs probably the most important piece of adoption infrastructure in the world. Is like up there. It's like one of the most important things is Bitrefill, and he's kind of like admitted that like they've promoted the Lightning Network like heavily, and Lightning not really doing super well on Bitrefill, but like USDT, like Tether on the Tron blockchain is like the number 3 or 4. It's like it's one of the most used things to buy stuff. And the reason for that is because it's a lot of like Latin American usage and like developing world usage where people want the dollar, I guess, and they want something cheap, and they don't have banks, and they don't want to do KYC. And so it's just like literally purely that. And so, I mean, BitPay, obviously, I'd like to see like the kinds of services that tend to use BitPay versus others, but it's clearly, obviously, Bitcoin heavy. And then you got like a lot of Litecoin. You got a little bit of Dogecoin. They did promote a lot of Dogecoin. And then like everything else kind of trails off. But then you have like coin cards. They're a little it's dodgy in some ways, I guess. I'm going to talk a little shit. But like coin cards at some point became very pro Monero. And there's a lot of people spending Monero on coin cards. It's like their number 2 after Bitcoin or something. And also, they like had Dash offline for like 3 months, and they're like, "Look, 0% Dash uses," because they like literally didn't support it during that time. There's some like dodgy nonsense that they did there, but it's like depending on your data source, it's like you get entirely different things. And like I had a chat with Jeremy on like the regular podcast or whatever about like the St. Kitts experience, and like in St. Kitts, there's like very little non-Bitcoin Cash usage as far as crypto is concerned, and I'm sure if you go to some parts of like Western Australia or Japan, it's probably similar. And then you go to other spots like El Salvador, there's probably no one using Bitcoin Cash there, probably. And it's just so weird how like these things kind of go around. And I think it's very fascinating at this stage of the development, like what things get used. And like what happens if Litecoin gets like $3 transaction fees? Is anyone going to use it on BitPay anymore? Are they going to go back to Bitcoin because, well, they're both expensive, but I'd rather use this. I was using Litecoin because it was cheaper. Or are they just going to go down the line to like a cheaper, like, what's it going to do? I have no idea, but I'm very, very excited to see how it turns out.
Like in a way, you're competing for limited block space, right? You're competing that you're getting a secure transaction. It's validated on an immutable blockchain, and you're either going to pay 50 cents for it, or you're going to pay 1/10 of a penny for it. And if that 1/10 of a penny goes to 50 and the 50 goes to 1/10 of a penny, the market will balance itself out, I think.
Right.
In that sense. I mean, again, I'll bring up another Litecoin thing while we're doing it.
Is it
MWeb, the extension blocks have flexible block space, like I mentioned to you. So it's going to be a long, long time before there's $3 transactions on Litecoin.
yeah,
Right.
and,
A
and
long,
that's
long,
kind
long, long time.
and that's kind of something that I didn't initially anticipate. I guess is I think first off, it's kind of crazy. We're talking about like decentralized communities and stuff. As far as I know, it's literally just one guy who did Mimblewimble on Litecoin, just like one dude who like developed the whole thing.
Well, David Burkett, he created, or he was a developer on Grin. I don't think he created Grin. And so, yeah, he got pegged by the foundation, which is made up of, it's a nonprofit, and Charlie donates a ton of money to it. So I would say Charlie oversaw it, and David did the grunt work on it.
Yeah.
Maybe the
So,
best way to put it.
but so it was literally just a like, as far as I'm able to at least, observe, it seemed to be mostly like, let's add this new functionality, a little bit of extra privacy. But
Right.
then like, I didn't think of it as like a scaling solution either. And honestly, it probably won't be for a long time until you have like broad-based mobile support. And
Right, next year's coming.
yeah, it's
But
so
see, we're having all these conversations as users, right?
yeah.
That's the big thing, and that to me
Yeah.
is still like incredibly
Rare.
surprising. Yeah, it's like how many people can you count, within your circle that's actively using, their tokens and their coins.
Yeah, you know what's something else I've realized? That's for like normies or whatever, especially. That's one of the easiest ways to get them like hooked on some coin. Is
Right.
if they start using it, they make a habit out of using it in some ways, then that's just the one that they use now. Like it's almost like whichever one is first. And it's power users like us that actually have to then reevaluate, well, is this the best one to use right now in this circumstance? But then it's the non-users that are like flaky all over the place or are just super hardcore maximalists of something because that doesn't get affected by reality. Maximalism is kind of counter reality usually because reality is never maximalist. Like if you're a something maximalist and you're looking at like the BitPay payment statistics, like you gotta admit, like if you gotta admit that other things are being used other than any of them, right? There's just a spattering of things being used. And if you're-
Just right now, was it 9% Dogecoin, right? From BitPay.
27% Litecoin, bro.
Well, I mean, obviously the alpha is on Dogecoin, so I might have to switch camps and become.
So
a
do you
Dogecoin
know
hack.
that Dogecoin? Do you know that Dogecoin and Litecoin are merge mined? Do you know that?
Yes. Yes.
So do you know that solves a bit of the? It's almost like a tail emission for
But
Litecoin.
Elon is.
That's
on
a pretty
Doge.
cool idea.
you know what?
Elon what? Elon what?
But Elon's for Doge, so I got to.
Yeah, no, and that's but that benefits Litecoin, and anything good for Litecoin benefits Dogecoin because they secure each other in a way, and so as the block rewards dwindle for Litecoin, they never change for Dogecoin. So the security budget, it helps stabilize the long-term security budget.
I think I'm going to become a Dogecoin maximalist now.
Hey,
Yeah.
dude, it was weird because I was
Converted
I
on
can't- I
screen.
got back. I'm not joking. I get in these spaces too much, and I want to engage the Dogecoin community. So last night it was like 2:30 in the morning, and I was in this one, and I was surprised how many Dogecoiners were like trying to differentiate Dogecoin from Bitcoin and Litecoin because we're saying like, look, if Bitcoin's a commodity, pretty much Litecoin is, and pretty much Dogecoin is. And they're like, no. Dogecoin's a currency, not a commodity. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's totally separate from Bitcoin and Litecoin. I'm thinking, what are you guys talking about? So it's just funny, like you talk about the maximalism of these people. They carve out these niches for themselves of like, we're unique because of X, rather than saying, how are we alike as opposed to how are we different? Right? It's just funny. It is. It's human nature, maybe.
I think it is. Human nature is a big factor in all of this. People are going to do what people are going to do. Nothing new under the sun. If all of this stuff blows to hell in a handbasket and a new form of crypto blossoms from the ashes, I'm pretty sure we're going to have the same arguments as before. So
Yeah. So what everyone most excited about in the next year or so is like for crypto? Uh, so I'm in the process of trying to redo my How to Live on Crypto series, and it's way more annoying this time than last time. And it's not because like it's gotten a lot easier to live on crypto since last time, but it's just that everything is reshuffled, everything's reshuffling every 2 seconds. And it's a lot harder to be like, just use this coin. It's like more like, well, why don't you use a couple? Why don't you use 2 to 3, and then you can do everything. But what I'm kind of excited about, there's a few. So BitRefill has a bill pay service that lets you pay any bill with crypto. They used to be in the U.S. They paused that because some nonsense. I don't know if they'll ever be back, but thankfully there's like a competitor called Spritz Finance, which oddly enough launched only supporting Polygon. Like, who the hell's paying their rent with Polygon? It's kind of weird, but they're starting to support more stuff, and so I'm really excited about that part. I know for a fact that there's quite a few different like instantly provisioned prepaid virtual debit card stuff for crypto cropping up. There was a couple of them, and then like Pay with Moon is like the mainstay right now. I know there's the Bitcoin company as well. There might be Coin Debit or something, but there's a few of these things cropping up. Ionia is a company that runs like the Dash Direct app, but also runs like Cake Pay in the Cake wallet. That's like the Monero, Litecoin, whatever wallet.
yeah,
And
they also
the
do
Edge
for
wallet.
Edge. Yeah,
And they have like a gift card function, lets you like spend just about anywhere in the U.S. Well, I mean, big box retailers, right, and save some on it with a variety of cryptos. They're coming out with a few different card programs, including for like international stuff. So I'm mostly pretty excited about all that stuff. I'm also excited about obviously Thorchain because right now anyone can earn like a savings account on their crypto in Thorchain. Like, you can just, in fact, I'm doing it for Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and AVAX right now, where you just like earn upper like 8 to 10% or whatever, 6 to 10% APY on that, like, without trusting anyone. And it's kind of cool because literally, like, you can do it through like specific wallets and stuff, but the way it's designed, you locate, like, let's say the Bitcoin Cash pool of Thorchain, and then you just send money into the pool, and now you have money in that's earning interest there. You just send it to the address, and you can also just send a dust amount from the same address to the pool, and it auto withdraws to that address. It's like it's weird. It's like a really cool little like automated system, and I think that really helps a lot. Edge and Trust Wallet and like XDeFi and a whole bunch of other things are using Thorchain for their swapping backend, and so it's always like exciting when you start seeing stuff being used that's not explicitly being used. That's like, I had no idea Thorchain was powering this, but in like a few weeks, I suppose, the first, like, I guess, official Thorchain fork is launching called the Maya protocol, which is very similar. It's kind of like the Litecoin to Thorchain's Bitcoin, sort of, in a lot of ways, with some tweaks. But so the cool thing about that is they're launching it with Thor Wallet as their launch partner. And so if you swap on Thor Wallet, you wouldn't necessarily know if you're using Thorchain or Maya backend. It'd be whichever one has a more favorable like fee and time and whatever else at the time does. So they do set the exchanging, the financial infrastructure of crypto used to be entirely centralized, and now is like rapidly decentralizing in some really cool ways. And like, I think by the next bull run, we won't need an FTX anyway. Like, the ability for like, who's going to be using that like dinosaur infrastructure of like centralized nonsense. So those are the biggest things I'm probably excited about coming next few months. I don't know what about you guys. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'm keen on, I could talk about this for hours, and obviously it's going to be Bitcoin Cash specific, but St. Kitts, they've got a bit of a circular economy going on there, and I expect that to expand massively because, like we were talking about before, kind of if you're closer to the money, you're going to benefit by jumping on board, and that's kind of what you can see that directly with like one taxi accepts BCH, one doesn't. Everyone shows up for the BCH conference. The guy who accepts BCH makes a ton of money, and the other guy was sitting there like, what am I doing wrong? Like, that's going to spread fast, and they might also do legal tender in March. That's kind of been announced, so that's one half of it. And then the other half is the cash tokens upgrade. So BCH is getting an upgrade that it's like a token thing, but it's actually just like scripting in the chain, which will make it so that you can do like, decentralized stable coins and this kind of stuff on BCH. That's going to be amazing once they start making, like nobody, as far as I know, has made a DEX on a UTXO chain. I don't think that exists yet, but there's a proof of concept for it on BCH. And I think that combo of UTXO and, some of the ideas from Ethereum that are only on account chains is going to be massive. So I'm super keen for that.
All right. What else is awesome?
Who's next? You, Esteban, or me?
You can go ahead, Grant.
Oh, Bitcoin just wants to. They just want to bask in the glow of the final say.
I do have the orange shirt on today, so
Yeah,
and I am glowing.
I'm the only one doing the Christmas theme. I was a little disappointed in you guys. No, I mean, if I'm talking in general, I do agree with you, Desertling said. I have only done a little bit with Thorchain. I'm excited about it because I think that's going to be a cool tool, and I'm glad to hear there's some kind of maybe a viable competitor to them coming out, because I think that's important. It can't just be complement.
What do they call it?
Another option, an alternative option.
As the founder called it, he called it exogenous redundancy.
Yeah, there you go. You got to have it. But I mean, from the Litecoin community, I mean, Mimblewimble extension blocks, MWeb as we call it. We launched it last year, and right now it's just only on Litecoin Core. So it's getting some usage, but not a lot. And I think that was kind of by design, like slowly introduce this thing. You don't want to go hard and fast because that's how you break things. So we should have next year, I'm expecting like first or second quarter, where mobile wallets will have MWeb. I know Cake Wallet, you mentioned them. They're definitely on board. Edge Wallet. Obviously Light Wallet will do it as well. And then I'm hoping we start to see cold storage solutions. So MWeb, it does some level of privacy. It's not perfect privacy. It's not Monero. It's not shielded Zcash transactions. But the end game in the mind of Charlie has always been fungibility. And so the more people that use it, the better. And I think that most mobile users, if they're given kind of an option, do you want to work on the private world or the non-private world? They're going to opt for the privacy world. And so right now there's like 50,000 Litecoin on MWeb. I'm hoping once we have mobile, I think that number will shoot up to over 1 million easily. I'll be honest with you. And I'm hoping that's where people just generally the default usage of Litecoin tends to be in that fungibility layer. And I mean, here's one of the cool things that I didn't even realize until they had it was like Monero has this. You can post a static address. So you're a business owner and you can just put a static address and receive and not have to worry that everybody knows all your comings and goings on chain,
All your come rocketing and come or whatever.
Yeah.
Going full circle.
I don't want anybody to know how many cum rockets I have.
Yeah.
My wife is down here. She just walked upstairs. I said that. She's like, "What?"
Perfect timing.
Yeah, this is a different kind of a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, you forgot your nipple clamps upstairs.
Yeah. So yeah, I have said this, and I know it's probably being dramatic as a Litecoiner, but to me, Litecoin is second to Bitcoin in the sense that it's pretty much everywhere Bitcoin is. It's on every exchange. It's on almost every single ATM. And so to take probably the second most available asset and add this privacy layer, I think is one of the biggest upgrades in crypto in maybe since SegWit.
Isn't it kind of funny to think though that Mimblewimble was designed by and kind of pioneered and pushed forward by other chains, and then Litecoin's like way up the rankings. Like it's kind of like the secondary but like primary torchbearer, right? Whereas usually it's something like zero knowledge proofs, whatever, like Zcash, like for the zero cash protocol and stuff like that. It's a top and everything is below. Like Bitcoin, and like SHA-256 and all the other stuff it does, it's the top and everything else is below. And it's funny because like Mimblewimble is like Grin and Beam and stuff like that, but then Litecoin's up at the top instead. It's kind of an interesting reversal of the typical dynamic, right?
Yeah, like they didn't pull from Litecoin. Litecoin went and pulled from somebody else.
It's being
And
adopted by a higher up chain. It's usually a trickle down, whereas this was a trickle up.
Hey,
you know?
and MWeb was created by an anonymous person. That's which is similar to another technology we know of.
Well, thank you, Craig Wright, for creating web.
But in the best part, I think that they did differently, like from Grin or Beam, the extension block is a different implementation. And if you guys haven't used it, it's extremely seamless. And that just like I think Zcash is the same way. You don't have to, the receiver doesn't have to opt into this privacy layer, and the sender, you know what I mean? There's both people can act independently how they want to act. And I think that was probably the best thing they did with it. They didn't try to make it some fancy shit. They just made it seamless. So
just make it work.
I'm excited. I'm excited about it. And I think Bitcoin will eventually adopt it, to be honest with you, within maybe 5 years or so.
We'll see. I mean, that would definitely solve a lot of, like, at some point I'm going to do a video on, like, where does Bitcoin go from here? But eventually there's the scaling bottleneck. Like, at some point you got to grow. At some point, if all the fees migrate to Lightning, you don't really have a security model moving forward. And there's a lot of, like, uncertainty. And maybe something like that could, help with the scaling without having to grow block size or whatever like that, without going that way. What do you think, Esteban? What are you pumped about other than just continuing to live our crazy lifestyle that we do?
Yeah, that's the if I'm able to make it another year, I'm pretty excited about that. Hopefully, I'm not tossed in prison or something for tax-related crap because of using crypto and entering this, as you say, crazy world. But some things that have really caught my attention has been a lot of like decentralizing social media and
the holy grail.
Yeah, I've been playing around with Nostra and also getting to see how things like Keat, which is their Slack/Zoom type app that's built on the Lightning rails, I think has been pretty interesting. Playing around with the Impervious browser, which is it's like Firefox, but you can connect it to your Lightning node and operate things across the Lightning network, which I think is pretty interesting too. I never thought I'd see something like that, where all of a sudden you have these rails that you're not just using as money, but now you're using it as applications.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty wild. And mostly just staying humble, stacking sats, and trying to help as many people off board fiat and on board into Bitcoin and crypto.
Yeah, I mean, fiat's so last decade, right? I think we're starting to move to a point where that's more and more of a reality. And I do remember some point in like 2010 or 2011, I was trying to figure out how I could like live off of gold, like get one of Peter Schiff's like gold debit cards, and like I hated fiat back then, and it's like no one's living on gold. Let's be honest. But then who's
crazy story?
Yeah,
2020, I tried to pay somebody with silver.
Nice. I have paid people in silver before, by the way.
Yeah. Well, here was the expression I got. Right? I gave them an ounce of silver. I'm like, look, this is what the silver's worth, and this is sound money, and this is how we did all this, and there's a 20-something, and he's like, yeah, but what do I do with it?
Well, he should have asked that also. He should have also asked that before he bought a Trump NFT, right?
Yeah.
What do you?
Yeah, I'm hoping.
You're muted, Grant. By the way.
Yeah, I would say that same guy probably did buy a Trump NFT.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see like all these individuals that I work with. They're internet natives, right? They've been in this tech. They were brought up in it. They were born in it, and I'm surprised that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and Web3 and DIDs haven't been something that they've adopted yet. It'll
happen.
Yeah.
Very soon.
it's very interesting, but it's I'd love to be able to help usher in more sound money principles. You know, but
That's absolutely true, and I can't wait until people laugh at me for trying to teach people how to live on crypto because it's just like how to like walk or how to breathe air. You know, I can't wait until people are like, "You idiot! Everyone's doing this stuff."
yeah, I can't wait for that too.
So-
Well, you're a pioneer, honestly, Joel. I think what you did is pretty awesome. And
Yeah, well, but
hats off to you on that. Seriously.
I mean, Esteban's kind of like leapfrogged with like the business thing. Now I'm playing catch up to like figure out how to structure like a real business on that stuff. And so at some point there's going to be someone whose entire life is in NFT format, and I'm just like scrambling to be like somehow their house title is an NFT, and so is their birth certificate and everything.
Yeah.
And I just got to feel like wait, how do you do this? And like we're going to be leapfrogged by those who come after us, which is always what everyone wants anyway. So Esteban, where do people follow you right now?
So right now you can follow me on Twitter at Rare Passenger.
Are you going to change that again? Because you pissed
No,
me off when you changed it before, and I couldn't tag you anymore.
It's this one's here to stay. So
Okay, Rare Passenger.
yep, the missus came up with that one, so I'm just keeping it.
And Jeremy, you're still at the BCH podcast, right, on Twitter? Well, you're still muted as well, but yeah, that's
Oh yeah, BitcoinCashPodcast.com. Check it out. All the info's there, and Twitter links and whatever.
And then Grant, you're at LTC Underground. You're the
LTC
only one who
Underground.
put it in their actual bio, other than me.
Smart.
So
Us
as,
Litecoiners are no fucking slouches, buddy.
yeah. So everyone who's watching, if you're still watching, please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Yeah. And
Well,
we're
and
gonna-
real quick about my underground. Wednesday nights, every week. I've had them for over a year. I think I'm going back to 9 p.m. Eastern. So just show up. It's an open forum. We're not like, I talk about all different assets, and we talk about crypto half the time, and half the time we talk about world events and politics and that type of stuff, and how much
I'm
we
going to
hate
make
government.
a sock account that's a Tron USDT maximalist and just come
Yeah.
and like start.
Joel's
like,
been in there a couple times, right? You were in there a couple times.
Yeah.
He brings the heat. I like Joel.
I need a little bit of a voice changer though. Be like, Tron is where it's at. Tron USDT.
You already got a low voice, mate. You need a high pitched one.
Safe
Hi, I
moon,
love
safe moon,
Tron.
Tron.
Yeah. Like
I gotta use the
Michael Jackson.
bathroom. Are we gonna end this thing? or
Yes.
what's going on?
So that's why everyone's chilling. You can please like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow me at the Desert Links on Twitter. Digital Cash Network everywhere. Next week is another Digital Cash Run-In, not a special Christmas one, just a regular one. And then it's the year-end Dash podcast number 200. I've made it 200 of those.
Holy
So
cow.
that'll be fun.
Hats off, mate.
That'll be fun to go into that one. So
Great.
yeah, like, comment, share, subscribe. Give me some money. Taxation is theft. Craig Wright is a whatever. Well, not going to get sued today.
Australian. He's
And
Australian.
yeah, not your keys, not your cheese. Live on crypto.
Merry Christmas.
Screw the fiat
yeah, and
system.
Merry Christmas. Yeah.
And happy holidays.
Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Whatever else. I don't. I'm not politically correct. I don't
Kwanzaa.
keep up with those. But yeah, happy all the things that happen when it's cold outside.
Festivus.
Don't fight with your family too much. And yeah, have a good year. Peace, guys.